I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Ojai Planning Commission, Wednesday, June 19th, 2013. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission on items appearing on the agenda are requested to complete a speaker's card and file it with the Secretary prior to the start of the meeting. Cards are available in the lobby. Speakers should state their name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Comments must be directed to the Commission and not to the audience. While Planning Commission is in session, all in attendance are expected to maintain order and decorum and obey the orders of the Chair. First of all, I'd like to introduce our new member of the Planning Commission, Orville Osborne, and hand it over to Rhonda. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Basor, the City Clerk, and I am going to give Orville Osborne his oath of office. He's replacing Marlene Luckman, who sadly resigned but is off on her way to Prescott, Arizona. So happy trails to her. So Orville, will you please stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me? I state your name.
I, Orville Osborne,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
and bear true faith
and bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
that I will well and faithfully
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations
Thank you.
and welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you.
You can turn, just so you learn, you can turn your microphone off in between speakers.
Okay.
Have a roll call.
Becker, Crabtree, Nolan.
Here.
Nicklin,
Here.
Merck.
Here.
Foster.
Here.
Osborne.
Here.
I'd like to ask Commissioner Osborne to do the Pledge of Allegiance for us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public communications. Public communication items is for the members of the public to address the Planning Commission on items of city business other than scheduled agenda items. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the Commission and will generally be referred to staff and or placed on subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action or non-agendized items can be taken at this meeting. Is there anyone who wants to speak from the audience, please? The consent items. The consent calendar is approved by roll call vote on one motion. Should any member of the Commission wish to discuss or disapprove an item, it must be removed from the consent calendar and considered a separate item. We'd like to approve the minutes of the May 15th meeting.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the May 15th meeting.
I'll second that.
Nolan,
Yes?
Nicklin,
Yes.
Merck,
Abstain.
Foster,
Yes.
and Osborne, you'll be abstaining.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you.
The Municipal Advisory Council Planning Commission Liaison Report. I attended the last meeting. It wasn't a very long meeting. There was a member from AT&T, and they were discussing cell phone towers. They are planning to lower one of the towers from 50 feet to 40 feet, which is apparently in the neighborhood it's going to make people happy. And then they talked about two new towers, one in Oakview area and one on Gridley and Grand Avenue to improve reception. They brought in some, they're doing these faux trees and palm trees and things. These two are going to be faux eucalyptus trees. Unfortunately, it's not an oak tree. So, and that was the basis of that meeting. The next MAC meeting is June 17th, and it's Commissioner Nolan. It's been cancelled.
July 15th, Commissioner.
Right.
Okay. Okay, we'll go and move on to disclosure of site visits and ex parte contacts.
Why don't we start on this end since our new commissioner?
I visited all the sites that are on the agenda this evening.
I visited all the sites on the agenda this evening.
I visited the sites on the agenda.
I too have visited the sites.
And I have visited some of the sites.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item number 2, public hearing item. It's design review permit DRP 13-08 for the addition to an existing business, Paradise Artists, at 108 East Matilla Street. Property owner, Bowie Hill. Applicant, Bill Minot. Staff report, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, commissioners, and newest Commissioner Orville Osborne. I'm excited to be working with you. This is a design review permit request for an addition to an existing business, which is known as Paradise Artists. And the property owner is Bowie Hill LLC. And the applicants are both here tonight. It's Bill Minot and Howie Silverman. And they may be having some comments up at the podium after the staff report and after there's any questions from the Planning Commission. The project is located at 108 East Matilla Street and is zoned village mixed use. Property is approximately 9,000 square feet in size and developed with a 3,582 square foot commercial building. Parking is located in the front, and there is also a monument sign in the front near the property's southeast corner. The building underwent extensive exterior renovations in 1994 when the concrete block structure was updated with a river rock veneer to create a California cottage appearance. Additions totaling 1,325 square feet were approved by the Planning Commission at that time back in 1995. And subsequent to that, and more recently, a large coast live oak tree that was in the front, sort of the southeastern portion of the property, fell onto the building in February 2012 and caused substantial damage to the building. And the applicant has obtained a building permit to repair the building. However, the applicant would also like to at this time to undertake a remodel of the building and construct a 292 square foot addition in addition to making the repairs to the building that were damaged in the tree. And as such, the applicant has applied for a design review permit for these latest changes. The proposed addition of 292 square feet would add 261 square feet to the front of the building and a small portion, 31 square feet, to an area behind the eastern wing of the building. An architectural entry feature with a height of approximately 14 feet would be added, and the roof would be redesigned. The new roof would be Spanish clay tile with a height of approximately 15 feet. And there would also be a refinishing of the exterior. The exterior would have a smooth stucco finish, and I know the staff report also mentions a stone veneer wainscot. That's not the case. That's what's there existing. It's going to be all smooth stucco. But the look of the building is changing appreciably, and we do have elevations depicting the proposed new look, as well as photographs of the existing building, which I believe all the commissioners are familiar with. There's also an existing freestanding sign, and that's proposed to remain in its present location with some modifications to the monument structure that the sign is mounted on, and that's also shown in your plans. The area between the sidewalk and the building around the sign would be landscaped. That's about a 400 square foot area of landscaping, and that's the area where that large oak tree was. So right now it's kind of a bare spot, and there's an opportunity to dress it up, and the applicants have prepared landscape plans, which again, even though the staff report says that they haven't been received, they were received recently, and they're actually included in your packet. They're shown on page 3 of attachment C. Property currently provides 5 standard parking spaces and 1 van-accessible disabled space, and no new parking is proposed with this small addition. The site has the following public improvements in place along the street frontage for the public realm: curb, gutter, and sidewalk. And these are all in very good shape, hence no improvements of these facilities are required. However, as the Commission knows, the city also has the ability to require the installation of a street tree to enhance the streetscape in compliance with the city's community forestry forest management plan. And then described in that plan, the project site is located in the downtown commercial neighborhood, which is characterized as having a poor canopy coverage, about 7% canopy coverage in this area. The recommended street tree for Matilaha Street is a valley oak. Street trees are not uniformly located along this stretch of Matilaha Street, but they are present along some of the developed properties on the north side of the street. In these locations, the street trees are typically placed within the sidewalk in a planter at the back of the curb, at the front of the curb. That's correct. So they're placed within a sidewalk in a planter at the back of the curb. A condition for approval, or a condition of approval for installation of a street tree has been included in the project's draft conditions of approval, and that's in Exhibit B of your first attachment, Attachment A. And the Planning Commission should discuss the requirement for a street tree as part of the consideration of the project. And if you refer to the landscape plans, you'll see that they're proposing a new tree in approximately the same location where the coast live oak was lost. But there is an opportunity to, in addition, to put in a street tree in the sidewalk. As far as the design review, the new exterior materials include an off-white smooth stucco, and I noted already that there is no wainscot associated with the current proposal. The elevations are depicted on your attachment C, the first page of that attachment, and I also have a sample board that I'll pass out at the end of my staff report. The applicant has proposed an entryway light that is in conformance with the city's lighting standards for being directed downward and shielded. However, the applicant has also expressed interest in perhaps a different light or an alternative fixture that would have shielding on the top and frosted glass that depending on the wattage of the bulb might have some light hitting the street area, and this is also something that should be discussed by the Commission. If the applicant is still interested in this alternative light fixture, they can describe it in more detail. So I do have a resolution attached for your consideration, and staff is recommending approval of the design review permit. The resolution has the findings, the conditions of approval, and the CEQA exemption that was drafted for this. And with that, I will pass the material boards down so you can review it, and I will be happy to entertain any questions from the Commission.
Are there any questions for staff?
I do have a quick question. Rob, you had mentioned the opportunity for a street tree, which would be in addition to the valley oak that they have specified. And the question that I would have is, what is the width of that sidewalk? Is it 5 feet? I think the scale's 1/8 of an inch, but I don't have a scale with me. I'm just curious if that's known. What's over on this plan? Looks like 5.
Looks like fine.
Okay. So, yeah, Lawrence and I were just discussing, it looks like 5 feet.
Okay.
So my only concern would be there's a wide, ingress, egress in the parking, so I'm assuming you wouldn't want to block that, or I guess the tree could be down where the parking is. I was just trying to look at, where a street tree could be located on that site.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a challenging
Yeah.
site, and the condition of approval provides some flexibility in the specifics of where the street tree is located.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is a draft condition of approval, so if there's a fair amount of concern on the feasibility of this, you may want to just either note that in your motion,
Right.
that may be something that might not be able to be achieved, or modify the language of the condition of approval.
Okay, thanks.
There is a power pole on that side of the pavement there, yeah. Yeah, right there on the driveway, so it could be a problem putting a tree there.
Okay, my question is about the tree. Isn't, when it was, it says the city has the ability to acquire the installation of a street tree. Are you talking about one tree? Now, because I was confused by your presentation, you're talking about maybe a second tree.
This would be a street tree within the public right-of-way, as opposed to the applicant's part of their landscaping, which is on the private property in their front yard.
Okay. So the way the resolution is written, it's requiring a tree. That would be on their property, correct?
No, the condition number 11, which is one of the
Yes.
conditions of approval, talks about a street tree. So we're talking within the public right-of-way.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any further questions from staff? The applicant, would you like to address the commission? Good. I'm going to open the public hearing. Yeah, sorry, the question.
I just had a quick question. It was regarding the signage. Because I didn't have my mic on. Thank you. I had a quick question in regards to the signage. Let me just pull that drawing up. There it is. You have a 2-foot-high stucco or concrete stucco surfaced base for the signage. Is that meant to be seen, or is that going to be camouflaged with the planting?
The planting, as you see, what we're trying to do is go ahead and surround that, bring it up enough, but yet look well groomed, to match into that neighborhood, because, we're at the back of the spa area. So we want to try to match that, and not, again, less is better in this case, so we'll attempt to camouflage that the best we can for
Okay.
attractiveness.
Yeah, that was my concern. It looked a little overscaled and oversized, the base.
Yeah,
And
the base will reduce substantially once we get rid of the river rock that's on there, and then we'll bring that down substantially, because we're sensitive to that as well.
Okay,
Of that rock being on there, so that we should see quite a bit of shrinkage and then camouflaging relative to that.
all right. So in other words, you're keeping the same sign, you're just going to be taking the stone off and then resurfacing.
Yes.
That's why the size is, okay,
And
I
the
get
sign is
it.
part of our international logo, so.
Okay, thank you.
Question for staff. In the sign ordinance, there is a height restriction on these. I noticed this was scaled at 6 feet. Is that within the specifications of the ordinance, or?
Well, this is not a new sign. It's the existing sign that was previously reviewed by staff. So
Right.
I didn't re-review the standards of the sign. and it's set in from the property, a few feet. It's not like it's right out on the back of the sidewalk. So does that, I'm sorry?
It's out of the setback, so it doesn't fall into.
Okay, well, see, Sherry's on top of the
Okay.
signage regulations more so than I am, so it's out of the setback. It sounds like there's
Mhm.
not a height issue.
Okay.
So I'd like to open public hearing, invite anybody in the public to talk about the project. No one, so let's close the public hearing.
I'll move to
Okay.
close the public hearing.
And I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Any further discussion, commissioners?
I'm glad to see this work going forward. I think it'll be a big improvement. Thank you for doing all this work.
Yeah, I also agree. It's a great improvement. We're getting away from that a modular home feel to maybe something a little more substance here. So it's encouraging to see it. I have a couple questions just to clarify my own understanding of a couple items that I've noted here. One relating to the east side of the lot and the fencing, and I don't know if this is addressed to the applicant and staff, but looking at the landscape plan, there's an existing fence, looks like to be about 6 feet tall, that I think was partially destroyed by this fallen tree. Incident a year or so ago. And so there's a gap there where there's quite a bit of building exposure on that east elevation. And then it picks up another partial low-line fence from a certain point forward in front of the existing building. And I guess I must have been looking at I don't have it in front of me, but the landscape plan, I think it shows a new gate there, correct? Let me go there. Yes, okay, on L1 there's a gate on that east side. So I guess my what I would like to see there, or at least have an understanding of what's going on, is that existing fence is going to be, it's assumed through this landscape plan, because it's not indicated on the architecturals, that there's going to be a fence extending to that point of that gate, or what purpose would it serve? From the rear of the yard forward to the street, okay? And that's not indicated on the architectural, so I just want to get some clarification on that. And the other assumption is that the 3-foot fencing that is existing, there's a partial 3-foot fence high, same material, same look, just quite a bit lower, would be continued to that existing gate to provide the continuity of the enclosure of the property. So I want clarification, would like to have clarification on that if I could. Also, the return of the wainscot on that same elevation shows it coming around that corner and then stopping at, it's not scaled off, I mean, I didn't scale it off, but it's no indication of measurement. I just would want to make sure that wainscot, it would look funny if it came up short of that gate.
Oh, but that's precisely why it's, did you tell him? Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We specifically put it that far, so it would be well within the gate.
That's the intent, is to bring that
100%.
wainscot to it?
It will be in front, so it faces the street, and the wainscot goes through the gate.
Okay, and am I also assuming correctly with that fencing, that wood fencing, that the intent is to bring the tall fence to the point of the gate and then return the short fence to it?
You're reading our mind, Stephen.
Okay. Sometimes not all the facts are shown, but.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I looked at the potential of doing that street tree. And unfortunately, like I said earlier, I don't have a scale in front of me, but I think we have to be think it's 15 feet away from all power poles, I believe, and telephone poles. And I don't know if this is an area where we could think of doing what we'd call like a curb extension or an extended tree planter, and then the gutter would go around it. But somewhere in this area, as long as we were 15 feet away from this pole.
Right, and just for clarity of the record, so that's towards the
West.
the southwest
Yes.
corner of the property along the sidewalk. There would be a bulb out there of the sidewalk to accommodate a street tree.
Now, of course, the thing that we would have to look at is how is that going to affect parking, and I don't think there would be a problem with drainage. I mean, basically the curb would go around it. I know have some of these existing in other places in the city, and they're adding some in certain areas. But I guess the question is, would it be appropriate for this street application on Matilaha? And but otherwise, I'm not sure where else we'd put a tree. It's probably maybe a little too tight right here with another big tree.
So Kathy, that first example, that requires a curb cut then?
Well, I'm assuming this is 5 feet. We kind of guessed if this was 4, this was probably 5. And by the time you put a cutout for a tree, you've really minimized your sidewalk width. And I think it's important to have a 5-foot sidewalk on Matilaha, considering its location in the downtown zone. So I think if we did do any kind of a cut in there, would really restrict the width. So possibly some sort of a tree pocket. We'd probably have to check with Public Works on it.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why the condition of approval's got some flexibility in it, but that's helpful to be a starting point, and it seems like
Yeah.
that is perhaps the only feasible location for a street tree.
I think it's also important to see where the power lines run, because if you plant a
Right.
tree, you have a lot of trees around Ojai with these weird top cuts that are kind of flat topped out in the power line. So that's something also I think we should look at as well.
Otherwise, I did want to say that it's I welcome the project. I think it's a great improvement.
Yeah, I'd like to say the same thing. It's a wonderful project and great addition to the city.
Was there something mentioned about the lighting, that the applicant wanted to address a different fixture, or are we good with what we have here? Or?
Well, that was my understanding up until the meeting, but I think Mr. Silverman said that they're fine with the light that's proposed in the plan set. Mr. Chair, I actually had a question of clarification also, now looking at the landscape plans, and I apologize I didn't notice this before, but if you look at the attachment B, which is the I guess that's the adjacent property. I was looking at a planter that's on the property to the east. So there is no planter in front of Paradise on the frontage there between the sidewalk and the parking. It looks like that's just basically the last parking space is right up to the back of the sidewalk. Okay, I take it back. So the landscaping plan looks like it's depicting it accurately.
The pole is actually right up against the curb. It's not, on the plan there, it looks like it's out here.
Oh, that's on
It's next door.
that's
Oh, is that
on
next door?
the east side of the.
I had one other question. Did you, and I may have missed this, do you have any bicycle parking allocated on the plan? No? Okay.
Just some architectural commentary here. I like the thickened walls in the front, and it's telling me that we're going to have some nice reveals. Okay. What type of windows are we looking at here, out of curiosity? Do you guys figure that one out yet?
I think you have, within your packets, I think you have these collated, stapled examples of the windows. The windows are really heavy, and we tried to get a...
They're wood windows?
No, they're metal, but like custom,
Oh,
heavy. A gentleman
Steel.
by the name of Russ Alford custom makes them here in town.
Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar. That's
They're awesome.
nice, yeah. And also, just to, again, to clarify, the tile is two-piece tile, not S-tile.
Oh, absolutely refused S-tile.
Pardon?
I absolutely would not have S-tile.
Okay.
You bet.
Sounds like we're on the right track.
You bet.
Good.
Lawrence, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
I'd like to ask staff, if the applicant is interested in the street tree requirement, or if he's opposed to the street tree requirement.
Well, we send the staff report out in advance and encourage the applicant to review all the conditions of approval. So I haven't heard any objections, but I'd look to the applicant if they have any.
I'm a little concerned about sorry, my apologies. A little concerned about, because what's happening with the Matilla Hub, as we've noticed, is our town is getting a little bit more touristy, if I may, and there's a lot of walking through that area now, where before it used to be just arcade and that, but now it's coming back into the Matilla side because the buildings and commerce are driving it in that area. In fact, we have a restaurant around the corner. So I don't know the effect of a second tree going in with regards to, I'm talking later years now, 5, 6 years from now, the growth as far as the, Tree City, as it says in the sign coming in, what effect that'll have on foot traffic. That would be my only concern.
So my question would be, if we pass the conditions of approval as they're currently written, that would require a tree. And I guess I would just suggest that we not require that additional street tree at this point, at least until we had some clarification about the feasibility of additional street tree. So my inclination would be to remove that from the condition of approval.
I don't think we need to remove it. I think we could request the Public Works Director to take a look at it, come up with a solution. If there isn't a solution, I think the alternate would be paying into a mitigation fee. But as far as having a street tree in a walkable area, it's highly desirable because it's going to create shade, and there's, just the magic of walking down a tree-lined street really draws the public. And also, a lot of times people like to park under those trees for shade too. So it really extends the kind of ambiance and the sense of place of the rest of downtown Ojai by adding the street trees. So I would like to see a tree there, but once again, we need to have it look. We need to look at it, and we need to see what the utility situation is and what have you out there.
And may I say this, we're not opposed to it at all. I mean,
Thank you.
So as far as the trees concerned, we have just two issues. You can't hear? Is that better? Yeah, good. So as far as the tree is concerned, we have the issue of the bump out, how that's going to be, the bump out on the curb cut.
Yeah, again, the condition's flexible for the final design, and the way it's written, the applicant's going to take the input that they had this evening from the commission, very specific input actually from Commissioner Nolan, and come in with a revised site plan that then we would review with the Public Works Director, would see if there's any utility conflicts, look at the overhead power lines, and see if that's feasible. And if it's feasible, then that's what they would be required to install. Similar to several of the other projects that have come before you recently.
I would also like to see, and it could even just be incorporated right on the edge of your landscape area where you've got a ground cover, that you would include bicycle parking. Thank you.
So getting back to Commissioner Osborne's question about with the approval, as far as the tree, how do we want to handle that?
I was satisfied with the discussion. It seems like there's a mechanism for evaluating, and if it's not going to be practical to put in a tree, it seems like you won't have to put in a tree. So that was my concern. It seems like that can be addressed. I agree with Commissioner Nolan's observations on the desirability. May I ask, what is our policy on bicycle parking? Do we have a policy on that subject?
We have our complete streets policies that's been adopted by the city council, and that speaks to provisions for multi users of this street. And then our zoning code does have some wording with respect to bicycle provisions for bicycle parking. And I'd have to look at it right now, but I think it sounds like it's a suggestion that we could incorporate into the plan. Unless there's any objections from the applicant, they could include that.
See any further discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt, do we have a number for this resolution?
Yes, 08.
PC Resolution 13-08, approving design review permit 13-08, subject to the findings of approval and conditions of approval.
Second?
Any further discussion?
Well, and did that motion include the addition of the bicycle parking?
And the subcommittee or design subcommittee for the tree?
We can certainly add that.
And the second agrees?
So I heard the first was amenable to that amendment, and the second, yes? Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call, Osborne?
Yes.
Foster?
Yes.
Merck?
Yes.
Nicklin?
Yes.
Nolan?
Yes.
Project's approved. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be in touch, gentlemen. Congratulations.
We'll move on to item number 3, design review permit DRP 1306 and conditional use permit 13-01 for a 2-story addition and remodel of an existing single-story residence at 1613 Emily Street. Property owners, applicants Tyler and Carrie Turner. Is this open to staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a request for a design review permit and a conditional use permit for a 2-story addition and remodel to an existing single-family residence. And the CUP portion is for a waiver of the 1 off-street covered parking space. The subject property is a 7,000 square foot parcel located at 613 Emily Street. Property is generally flat and is developed with a 2-bedroom, 765 square foot main residence with a 169 square foot covered patio and a 180 square foot 1-car detached garage. All of the existing structures are currently single story, and the detached garage is accessed by a 12-foot wide gravel driveway, which provides access from Emily Street and off-street vehicle parking for the main residence. There's a wood perimeter fencing 6 feet in height located along the northern, western, and a portion of the southern property line. And then there's a picket fence 4 feet in height enclosing the sides of the front yard area. A 4-foot picket fence and stone wall combination is located along the property's Emily Street frontage. The proposed project consists of a 1st and 2nd story addition and remodel the main residence. The 1st floor addition would include 122 additional square feet, and the 2nd floor addition would include 344 square feet, and that's located approximately over the area of the 1st floor addition. The applicant, again, is requesting a waiver for the 2-car covered parking requirements in the R2 zone. That's our multifamily residential medium-density zone. Parking for one car would be provided in the existing garage, and parking for additional cars would be along the 85-foot-long driveway well outside of the front yard setback. The proposed exterior elevations would adhere to the existing craftsman-style architecture. In addition, the existing horizontal wood siding would be replaced with vertical redwood plank siding and stained cedar shingles. New windows and other architectural enhancements would be added to the existing front elevation in the proposed first and second floor elevations. I neglected to mention that the property owner and applicant are Tyler and Carrie Turner, and I think Mr. Turner's here? Yeah. Okay, oh, hi. And their architect, Wade Elson's here also? Oh, there he is. Okay, I didn't see you back there, Wade. Designer, yes, thanks. So if the commission has any questions for the applicant or the designer, they're both here. The proposed additions would meet all setback height and size coverage requirements for the R2 zone. The existing detached garage does not meet the 12-foot side yard setback. However, this is a legal non-conforming structure and no expansion of the structure is proposed. So that would be allowable. The only zoning code issue with this proposal is the fence height in the front yard setback, which slightly exceeds the 3-foot high height limit for front yard setbacks. And that is something that staff thinks is solvable by simply cutting down the picket portion of the fence to a 3-foot high fence. Or if the applicant would like to replace the fence in its entirety, that would be an option as well. And we do have a condition of approval attached to the resolution that would require the fence within the front yard setback to be reduced to 3-foot height. The property was identified as one that had potentially significant historic resources in the city's 2011 Historic Resources Reconnaissance Survey. And because of that, the applicant prepared a historic resources evaluation, which concluded that the residence is not a significant historic resource. It was an interesting situation where the property actually used to consist of a larger lot with 2 houses on it, and then subsequent to the survey, it was split into 2 separate lots. And the real structure of value that was noted in the survey was on the adjacent property. So the report that they had prepared by San Buenaventura Research Associates clarified that and recommended that the 613 Emily Street structure be reclassified to indicate that it does not have historic merit. So we've done our due diligence on the historic resources and concluded that this project, that this property doesn't include a historic structure, a significant historic structure. The property currently does not provide any street improvements other than a paved roadway along the Emily Street frontage. The applicant does propose to construct a 14-foot wide concrete driveway apron and approximately 35 feet of concrete curb, gutter, and sidewalk in accordance with the city's requirements. And again, for street trees, a condition of approval has been added which requires the inclusion of 1 street tree as part of the street improvements. And this is an area that has decent or good canopy coverage, 22%. But again, it is, the city does have the ability to require the addition of a street tree. And again, I would look for any input from the Planning Commission on that, and if the applicant would be so kind to, when they speak at the podium, just note if they have any objections for the record to the conditions of approval. The attachments that are included along with the staff report are the resolution, and again, staff is recommending approval. That resolution has findings of approval, conditions of approval, a CEQA exemption that's been drafted, and then attachments B and C are the site photos and the project plans. So this is a fairly small addition, but it is a 2-story addition, and that's why, and it's an R2 zoning district, so for those reasons it comes to the Planning Commission for a design review permit. And we have a really good application. It's got all the materials we need to review it. So With that, I'll entertain any questions from the Planning Commission.
Any questions for staff?
Yes, I have a question just regarding the zoning. So R2, basically this allows duplexes, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from any commissioners? Yeah. Would the applicant or his representative like to come up to the podium?
I'd just like to say that we've looked over your recommendations and we agreed to all of them as far as the street tree and the sidewalk and lowering the fence line. So, Tyler, turn.
Questions from the commission? Nothing. I'd like to open the public hearing on this. Any members of the audience like to have any comment, please?
I'll move we close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Commission discussion.
Yeah, I think this is a really nice design. I like the way the floor plan steps back. It's providing a lot of interest, not only horizontally but vertically. So there's some nice interest. There's attention to detail on it in terms of the physicality of it. It's a great design, and also the second story being not up front, but step back to the rear. You have a reasonably good-sized rear yard. I think it fits well with the neighborhood. Good job. Yeah.
I'd like to also echo that. I was impressed the way that the whole property stepped back and it wasn't in the road, and it's almost, you don't see it. It's maintaining still that look of the street, which is really nicely done.
I'm in agreement also. I think really nice architectural detail, and it really fits in nicely with the existing structure. And I'm also okay with not having the covered parking, just due to the scale and the size of the lot and the length of your driveway. I think it's fine.
So, someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to adopt a resolution Resolution number 130809, approving design review permit DRP 13-06 and conditional use permit CUP 13-01, subject to the findings.
01.
That's the CUP. Subject to the finding and conditions of approval.
Also second the motion.
Any discussion, or go ahead and roll call? Chair, anyone?
I
Okay.
think we're ready for roll call.
Osborne?
Yes.
Foster?
Yes.
Merck?
Yes.
Nicklin?
Yes.
Nolan?
Yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations. Also,
Good job.
his wife is pregnant. Has she had her baby yet? She did, yeah, on Sunday. Oh, congratulations. That's fun. So you can go home and give her good news. Thanks, Tyler. Thanks, Wade.
Could I add one thing, Mr. Chair? Just I know the decision's already closed, and that's fine. I just wanted to note that I had assistance from our contract planner, Josh Janowitz, on preparing the staff report and working with the applicant, which is why I hadn't met Mr. Tyler before. But because of Josh and Sherry have been really doing a good job getting the materials together in the staff report. Josh would have been here to give the report, however, he's on vacation this week. So anyway, you'll see him in a future meeting. even though we are, as you'll find out later in the agenda, we are moving quickly with the hiring of the assistant planner part-time position. I'll probably still need to have some backup contract planning support on occasion.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to item number 4. It's design review permit DRP 13-04, conditional use permit 10-06, RV01, and sign permit S13-13 to expand the use for wine sales and tasting for an existing conditional use permit. And do a staff report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request for a design review permit, sign permit, and conditional use permit to expand the use of wine sales and tasting for the Ojai Vineyard, which is an existing use at 109 South Montgomery Street. And the applicant is here in the audience, Mr. Adam Tolmec. If you don't know him, I've had the pleasure of meeting Adam and working with him on this project as it's gone through the process in the Historic Preservation Review last week and now before the Planning Commission here. The zoning of the parcel is village mixed use, and the existing wine tasting facility has been in operation since May of 2010, when the project, or shortly thereafter, when the project received approval of a conditional use permit for that operation at that location. But it was only in a small portion of the building, which is the firehouse, which is actually a county historic landmark. And so the original permits had the retail use and the wine tasting use in Suite C, as well as outdoor wine tasting on a 136 square foot front patio area fronting the Suite C, which is on the southern end of the building. Though the facility is currently open 7 days a week, and the hours are 11:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Their existing conditional use permit actually allows for longer operation if they so choose, and they're not requesting any change to that condition of approval. But right now they're well within their allowed hours of operations. A selection of wines is sold on the premises, along with wine club memberships and other miscellaneous merchandise. And there is very limited on-site wine storage. Well, I don't want to say very limited, but there's limited wine storage on the site that would allow for on-site sales and on-site customer pickup of the wine for their members and such. The remaining ground floor portions of the building were previously occupied by the Firehouse Pottery and Gallery, and that area has been vacant for the last few months, and this is the area that the Ojai Vineyard would like to expand into. So they'll essentially be taking up the entire first story of that front building on the property. And the expanded retail uses would occupy a total area of about 2,448 square feet. There are some interior tenant improvements proposed, and there are also some changes to the landscaping. The project applicant proposes to construct a 412 square foot outdoor wine tasting and dining space in front of the building, and there is an existing covered patio space about 525 square feet towards the rear of the building, or at the rear of the building, and that would be used occasionally for overflow wine tasting and an overflow dining area if needed. No exterior building additions are proposed, but there's some modifications to the exterior, and the main modifications include installation of new storefront windows. So this is on the Montgomery Street frontage. Installation of a new storefront entry door, and construction of a new 3-foot-high wrought iron fence and new streetscape landscaping along Montgomery Street to define the outdoor wine tasting and dining area. And this is actually a requirement of the state ABC that you need to have an area limited from the public sidewalk, and they are not encroaching into the public right-of-way. This area would still be on their property. It would just be at the front of the building. There's also landscaping proposed for additional landscaping around the rear patio area, And there's a removal of the existing sign, which is over above Suite C, and they're going to move the sign and have a slightly bigger sign on the building face where the firehouse pottery and gallery space was. So they're going to just still have one sign on the front of the building. It's just going to be shifted over. The 5 existing parking spaces on the property, which are located in the back of the building, they would be maintained primarily for employee parking. Parking for customers would continue to be provided via the unrestricted parallel parking spaces along South Montgomery Street, and the additional parking would be provided in nearby public parking lots located along East Ojai Avenue and other nearby locations. So they're not adding to the building. There is existing parking, and per our zoning code, because of the proximity of public parking lots, they don't necessarily have to provide the total parking spaces off-site or on-site, rather, that they would normally need to under our zoning code. The project plans are included as attachment E, and there are sign plans which are included as attachment D. The staff has reviewed the proposal and believes that the architectural enhancements and the new landscaping elements would improve the look of the property and would provide desirable street fronting amenities. The city's Historic Preservation Commission did review this project just last week, and they were very supportive of the proposed design. There was some discussion at the meeting initially, but the entire commission, after they had some discussion, really thought it was a very nice design. Commissioner Hill remarked that this is the only Public Works Authority-sponsored project in the city of Ojai that he's aware of, and that the style of the windows and the new door that Mr. Tolmack is proposing is in keeping with the type of windows that you would see with the Public Works Authority era picture, or project rather. And that same design of the window with this 12 by 18 steel panels is actually on the north-facing side of the building, and so they're going to be repeating that in the front. Where that is happening is where the old fire doors were, the roll-up doors for the fire trucks. Approximately 412 square feet of additional patio landscaping would be installed adjacent to the sidewalk fronting South Montgomery Street. And then I mentioned the enhancement of landscaping at the rear of the building. And the landscaping is depicted in attachment E. That new sign would be painted onto the street-facing wall of the building and would occupy approximately 21 square foot of space, 20.75 square feet. And the location of the new signage, I already explained, would be oriented more towards the center of the building over the firehouse pottery and gallery space, the previous space that they occupied. The signage would be in Gaudi old-style type, using a dark brown color, and the applicant did provide a sample of what that would look like, as well as some very nice renderings of the project, one of which was included in the pocket of your binder as a supplemental sheet. And the applicant just today turned in a couple of additional renderings, showing in particular the landscaping in a little bit more detail. And you all have copies of that. So we've reviewed the sign and found that it's consistent with the city sign standards. The staff is again recommending approval of this project, and there is a resolution for your consideration as attachment A with the findings, conditions of approval, and the CEQA exemption. The applicant provided a more detailed project description, which is attachment B. Site photos are attachment C, sign plans attachment D, and then the project plans are attachment E. So this one does not have a street tree requirement, so that's one thing that we won't have to, or the commission won't have to discuss as you deliberate this. And with that, I will be available for any questions.
Any questions for staff from the commission? Nothing. Mr. Tolmark, would you like to address the commission?
Well, I'll say hello.
Thank you.
Tolmac, and I think Rob Mullane has described the project pretty thoroughly. But if you do have any particular questions about it, I'd be happy to answer those questions. And my plan there really is actually not to change the nature of the business, but just to currently we're the indoor portion of the building that we're occupying is about 300 square feet, so it's quite tiny, and we would like to be able to take care of our customers a little better particularly on weekends when it does get a little bit busy. Once you get about 8 people inside the 300 square foot room, it's a little tight, and so really the main thrust of the project is to have a little bit of elbow room. And then for me it was real important to try to do the front of this new space. We really wanted to change out the windows that are there, which are really kind of a 1970s style, and they're okay, but we really are trying to catch a little bit of the character of this of this historic building, which we absolutely love. But if you have questions, please.
Any questions?
Yeah, Adam, I have a question for you. I understand there's I recall seeing a gate on that driveway. There's a gate.
To the left, yes.
Yes, on the left side as you're facing the property, which is, I imagine, as long as it's open during operating hours, it's perfectly fine. Is your intent to leave that gate there?
Well, yeah, I mean that's.
It's not on the plans as such, so.
Right, it's not really exactly in my purview because the property it's has the historic firehouse. And then and the whole ground floor we would be occupying, but the upstairs there's an apartment there, and then actually at the back of the property there's a new relatively newly constructed within the last 20 years a house and back there, and so the issue I think for the other tenants is if it's open on the weekends, it gets clogged with tourists.
How does that impact the parking spaces? I mean, I was assuming that is the intent, not to keep public from parking in the back then?
Well, yeah, the intention really is, and detailed in the report there, is that was really for employee parking, the 5 spaces that we have.
And I realized that we had the public parking almost, adjacent across the street there. So I think that you're well within that 500-foot radius, right, Sherry? Yeah. Okay.
And then my expectation is not a dramatic. I mean, there's only so many people that want to go wine tasting in Ojai, and so my anticipation is not a gigantic increase in traffic to get to the place. Originally we had our little 300 square feet, and we have a steady stream of customers. But then next door, at the former pottery, they had the studio there, and then as well as a pottery school in the back. And so, as I saw it, the net need for parking should remain the same. I realize on weekends it's always busy.
Yeah, it feels like it's appealing to foot traffic is going to be a big draw for that.
Right, and then we also do provide for bicycle parking in the front, and that really came from that actually came organically from my staff who said there's people who come here with bicycles and they need some place to put them, and so that's great. We love to encourage that.
And it's really not is there going to be food served at all here? Just finger
there
foods?
There is
or?
no current plan for food. It's really, the current plan is to keep keep the same nature of the business, which is exclusively wine tasting and and not very many knickknacks. Although in my proposal. Mr. Mullane suggested that I should make comments about any possible future scenarios. And so, I mean, that is, that is something I mentioned in my discussion, that, some light snacky stuff is a possibility for the future. Currently, I have no plans to do that. I don't really want to get in the restaurant business.
Commissioner Foster, that would need to be included in a CUP because VMU doesn't allow for restaurant or food without the CUP.
Oh, and that is VMU.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks.
I'd like to suggest you talk to the people at Paradise Artists about the windows, because they were showing us the windows they're going to put in there, and they look beautiful, and they're made locally, and they're real.
Oh, yeah, I
It's
will look
heavy.
into that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have a couple other bids. I have a local person in Somas who makes windows, and I have there's another company that, and I think they're based in LA, that does those. I'm really looking for, what I really want to have is something that really mimics what's there on the north face of the building.
Yeah, those are really nice looking windows. Went around.
I have just a comment on the landscape. First of all, I love what you're doing, and I think it's just really going to extend the vibrancy of downtown, taking a little bit further on Montgomery Street by having that outdoor seating area, and thank you for adding the bicycle parking. I do notice that, for instance, like the Ojai Beverage Company always has bikes, stacked against the fences and what have you, so I do know that a lot of people ride their bikes around, and I think they'll be joining your operation. But I did have one question about the plant material. I know she had creeping fig, and I'm okay with you putting it on there, but I just wanted to make sure you knew what creeping fig does down the road.
Oh, yeah, no, and actually, I have a sister-in-law who has 35 years of experience with horticulture, and our idea with the creeping fig is to keep it trimmed really, really tight, because there's in the initial growth, it's very fine, small leaves, and it does beautiful things. But if you don't keep it trimmed back, it goes to a big leaf form, and it also becomes quite invasive in the building. So our idea is to really, that would be like a green background, because we will have vines growing up, and those vines will lose their leaves in the fall, and is to have a little bit of greenery for the rest of the year, and that would be like trimmed, maximally, so it's very, very thin.
I just know that it can be high maintenance, and I just wanted to make sure you knew that. Okay.
There has some being used on Ojai Avenue in one of the buildings. They use creeping fig, and they let it get really thick, and actually it falls off if it gets too heavy too. So your idea of keeping it trimmed back it's great.
Right. Yeah. No, it would just be to like one layer of that juvenile form, rather than the secondary bigger leaf form that forms later.
I love the way you've thought of using the vine too. It's very apt for the wine tasting and the.
Right, and our idea there actually is to use, I think it's called Vitis californicus or something like that, and it's a beautiful, there's a particular strain of that people have selected, and it's one that it has beautiful fall colors.
Is there, you can maintain the same color palette on the building?
Yeah, the
change
photos
it?
I brought are kind of they're from my color printer, and it's not very good. And so actually the color palette would stay identical to what's there now. I'm happy with it, and I don't see any reason to change.
Looks nice. Yeah.
Thank you. Open the public hearing. Anyone in the public wishing to address the Commission? We have one. Yes, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Leonard Clave. I live at 412 North Fulton Street. First of all, welcome Commissioner Osborne. Later I'll be speaking as representative of the Art Center, and my comments concern the Art Center, but I am speaking here as an individual. Parking is horrible down there. I don't know what public parking lot is within 500 feet. Maybe, and is 500 feet?
Probably lower levy towards
499 and
too.
3/4 perhaps. But parking really is difficult on weekends down there. And I hope you have enough business so that the parking problem increases. And perhaps I should be talking to city council about this, but there's that vacant lot, and I don't know when they're ever going to build on the Noble property, but perhaps the city could inquire as to making that a temporary parking facility, because it really is a problem. I mean, there are times where you just, I'm not sure whether there's any parking in especially with Azu doing increased business, Agave Maria, it's becoming more of a restaurant town, and parking is very difficult. But I'm in favor of the project. They're great neighbors to the Art Center, and I think we fit well together. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else make a motion?
I'll move the public hearing be closed.
I'll second the closing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Commission discussion.
I think it's a great project. I'm willing to make a motion if we're ready. All right. I'll make a motion that we approve PC Resolution number 13-10, approving design review permit 13-04 and conditional use permit 10-06 RV01 and sign permit S13-13, subject to the findings of approval and conditions of approval.
I'll second that.
Osborne?
Aye.
Foster?
Yes.
Merck?
Yes.
Nicklin?
Yes.
Nolan?
Yes.
Motion passes and you're approved. Thanks, Adam.
Good to see you, Jim.
We go on to item number 5, conditional use permit, CUP 13-02 for a personal fitness training studio in the light manufacturing industrial M1 zoning district. Open to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is another public hearing. It's a request for a conditional use permit for a personal fitness training studio in the manufacturing zoning district. And the reason why this requires a CUP is because health facilities, gyms are not explicitly allowed and are allowable uses in the manufacturing district, but they have been allowed in the past, similar uses with a conditional use permit. And that's because you want to make sure that there's compatible land uses in an industrial area. So the property owner is Robert Reingold, and the applicant is Valerie Poulos, who's here in the audience and would be able to address any questions from the commission. The project is at Suite O of 406 Bryant Circle. And again, the zoning is light industrial manufacturing. It's M1 zoning. The property itself is just over 2 acres. And it's developed with a manufacturing building with units A through O. Typical uses in the existing building include cabinet making, raw foods distribution, and the Bryant Street Gym. The hours of operation for these uses range from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And as far as the space for Suite O for the proposed use, that's about 2,146 square feet in size. The proposed project would be a private fitness training studio in an existing building. The applicant's proposing a day use only with primarily one fitness trainer on site. So we're not talking a public gym with a lot of parking demand. It would be private, by appointment, limited number of customers at any one time. The proposed hours of operation are 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And the proposal requires, again, the conditional use permit because this use is not specifically listed in the M1 zoning district. There would be interior improvements to the building, to the space, but no exterior changes were proposed, and therefore you don't have a design review permit before you in addition to the CUP. It's strictly a use determination this evening. Regarding parking, again, it's not anticipated that the fitness studio would require parking over and above that's available on site. The property has 78 parking spaces available to the tenants of the industrial building, and our zoning code for a building of that size requires 76 spaces, so they're a little bit overparked. And they are also providing exercise facilities within walking distance to a concentration of workplaces, which potentially could reduce traffic congestion during the lunch and pre-working hours or after work hours. So many of the businesses in this area typically close between 3 and 5 p.m., so this would stay open longer, and presumably some of the employees in the area might take advantage of this new facility. So it's a pretty short staff report. I do have the regular attachments, the resolution, the exhibits with the findings, conditions, and the CEQA exemption. There's site photos is included as attachment B, and the project plans are attachment C. And I don't think Valerie necessarily wanted to give a presentation, but she is available to answer any questions from the commission. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for staff? And any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Does the applicant have any questions for the commission? Good evening.
In case you had questions for me.
Thank you. I'll open the public hearing, and anyone from the public wishing to address this? No, make a motion.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
I'll second the closing.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Commission discussion, any further discussion?
I have a question for staff. Well, first of all, this use strikes me as very reasonable in this kind of zoning. Surely no one could object to exercise in the industrial zone. But I'm just curious if this is crowding out any other businesses. I realize the city has a very limited amount of zoning for industrial type uses. Do you have a sense of the market demand at this point?
I do. There's quite a few vacant properties within that area, and really the pressure historically, as I understand it, at least recently, has been on converting those to either mixed residential type uses or to straight residential uses. So there's I can't speak to the amount of vacancies in that area, but I do believe there are at least some existing buildings with vacant available suites. But there's certainly quite a few lots that haven't been either developed at all or haven't been fully utilized, and it has been something that the Planning Commission and the City Council have been keeping in mind as uses come in this area and as they entertain conversions of the industrial use to other uses, that this really is our limited supply of that zoning in the city.
Any other questions? So I'm going to request a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt PC Resolution number 1311, approving conditional use permit 13-02, subject to the findings and conditions of approval.
I'll second that.
Osborne?
Yes.
Foster?
Yes.
Merck?
Yes.
Nicklin?
Yes.
Nolan?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. We'll mail you your approval letter, Valerie. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, it's always interesting when a citizen comes in and they hear that they need a conditional use permit and that needs to go to the Planning Commission, and oftentimes the reaction is, oh no, that's going to be very difficult. But I think with this with this project, it was very straightforward, and we actually got it processed very quickly, and I don't think Valerie had to wait more than a couple weeks to I mean, it was a quick turnaround, so we like to do that when we can, because sometimes it is a difficult process, but in this case it was not.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item number 6. This is a text amendment, TA 13-01. It's an amendment to the city's sign regulations, Article 16, Chapter 2 of Title 10 of the city's municipal code, to amend the standards for banner signs, to approve a process for allowing banner signs to be displayed for more than 30 days for certain uses, such as plays and special events. Turn it over to staff.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would characterize this as a surgical amendment of the zoning code, and there are times when we want to open up a chapter or a section within our zoning code, make really comprehensive changes. This is not what's before the commission tonight. It's to address some desires of some of the businesses and nonprofits in the community that have struggled with complying with our existing regulations on banner signs because of the nature of the business that they do, are advertising more than 4 events per year and events that go on for a duration of longer than 30 days. And that's right now what we have on the books for banner signs. An entity can only have a maximum of 4 banners per year, and for no longer than 30 days at a time. So for certain uses, like the Art Center, like the Old Theater 150, like the museum, there are events that go on longer than that 30 days, and they've pointed this out to the city council, and in fact the mayor at a recent meeting suggested that we bring this issue to the Planning Commission and then ultimately the council for a text amendment. And this first came up that I'm aware of in a discussion of the priorities for the department, for the Community Development Department on May 14th, 2013. And the issue came up, and the direction to staff was to bring forth these revisions. And the again, we're looking primarily, this is not opening the door to everybody that wants to use a banner sign. It's specific to certain types of advertising for plays, for art shows, for music events. So it's a very narrow topical area that would be provided with the longer duration and the more frequent displays. So the staff has drafted an ordinance, and this is the first time you've seen it. It's really I would say it's certainly subject to change and revision tonight, even if there's a need to do that. And the text amendment to the zoning ordinance does provide this additional flexibility for banner signs for certain uses, and that ordinance is included as attachment B. And you would be making a recommendation to the city council in this case, because they would be the final decision maker. And so attachment A is a resolution of the Planning Commission recommending that the city council make the changes to the zoning code. And I provided the draft ordinance in a strike-through and underline format, so the commission and others, public and others, could see the specific changes that the staff is bringing forth. It's exempt from CEQA under the general rule under section 15061B3, because the proposed amendment of the city's sign regulations is covered by the general rule that CEQA only applies to projects which have the potential for causing a significant impact on the environment. And in this case, it can be seen with certainty that there's no impacts presented by this, no significant impacts. I do want to say that since the staff report came out, the city got via email comments from Mr. Clafe, who is here this evening, and he's, as he noted in the earlier item, he's representing the Art Center, and I'm sure he'll want to speak to this item at the public hearing portion. But the email that Mr. Clafe provided requested additional revisions to the proposed zoning ordinance amendment, and one of the requested revisions was to address the desire for at least the Art Center to mount their banners on posts instead of what is required now in the zoning ordinance, which is on the building or walls also, I believe. So they right now have posts, and that's where they display their banners, and they would like the ordinance to provide that opportunity for them to do that. So that would be an additional change to the zoning code that we don't necessarily need the detailed language of tonight, but if the commission is supportive of that change, we could incorporate that into the ordinance as it goes on to the city council for their consideration. There's the same email from Mr. Clafe also noted that his clients and others were interested in perhaps fee reductions. The current banner sign fee is $90 per banner, and there certainly is an opportunity to reduce that fee if that's the will of the council. But if the Planning Commission wants to comment on the request for fee reduction, you could. I will say that staff can review these banners fairly quickly, especially if they're in the same location, they're the same size. If they have committed to some standards in that, it makes our review pretty expedited. But there is some time involved. We have to log the case. We have to review the plans. We have to stamp the plans, correspond with the applicant. So it's a minimum of a half hour of either Sherry or my time. So I would not recommend a staff reducing this fee to zero, and I certainly would not recommend having the banners be exempt. I think they should be looked at by staff on a individual banner by banner basis, but $90 may not necessarily be necessary for review of this type of application. And if the commission would want to reduce that, my recommendation would be something on the order of maybe half that, $45 or so. But again, that's up for discussion this evening. I may have missed something else in Mr. Clafe's letter, but I'm glad he's here tonight so he can speak to that. I will take whatever recommendations the commission has. If you take action on the resolution tonight, we'll have another public hearing on this ordinance amendment before the city council once we are able to do the noticing, and they'll probably see it within 3 or 4 weeks, somewhere in that time frame. So with that, I'll take any questions from the commission.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Rob, you as you're talking about this fee thing, so this $45 should allow you to recoup the time that staff would spend on it?
Correct. Yes, yes. I think that $45 on average would be adequate for our staff review of individual banners.
Mm-hmm. In this particular scenario where there's repetitive signage going up multiple times throughout the year.
Correct.
Is that the idea?
That's the idea. For the few types of uses that this would be provide these additional opportunities for more banner signs, then I think we could $45 would be adequate.
Okay.
Rob, you mentioned that occasionally you may get a banner that is unusual and that you'd have to maybe spend some more time on. Would you just do that as more of a flexible rate, or just to recoup the time?
No, it wouldn't be an actual
No.
cost base. It would. So the idea of our set fees is that they cover the average application, and the acknowledgement is sometimes it takes a little bit less than that. Sometimes, occasionally there are lots of back and forth with the applicant. It could take several hours, but that's just built into the average. And if that starts happening a lot, then we recommend in the annual review of the fee schedule that we increase some of the fees.
Okay, good.
I'm curious about this issue about the posts. So perhaps you could suggest why the original, yes, we'll have public hearing in just a second. I wanted to ask the staff first on a little background. What was the reasoning for not hanging between posts?
Well, I wasn't around when that provision of the sign code was added, but we have, if you look at attachment B, page 2 of 4, under item 4, there's a specific standard in there that says that banners shall not hang between posts or from trees. And I think the general idea, and I'm speculating a little bit, but I don't think it's too far of a reach, is that you can, aesthetically, things can get very awkward. People, especially if it's not a set location with set posts, people will put up all sorts of support structures, and the banners will be droopy, or they'll be at a strange angle. So there, in these cases, there could be, as part of our review, we could make sure that the mounting area is even. It looks nice. It's not going to look like an eyesore when the sign's not there. Those sorts of things could be taken into consideration.
Questions? So I'd like to open the public hearing, and one speaker card, Leonard Clough.
Good evening again, Leonard Clay, still live at 412 North Fulton Street. This time I am here as representative of both the Art Center and Ojai Yes, the Ojai Youth Entertainment Studio, formerly Theater 150. First of all, thank you for considering the changes. Special thanks to Mayor Blatz for moving this along so quickly after I brought it to his attention, as well as Mr. Clark and Mr. Mullane. This came about, we've had a banner at the Art Center for each performance at the theater for I don't know how long. It has been the same banner in terms of size, manufacturer, and location for every performance. And the same, at least in terms of OIS's history, they get the banners from the same place we do. So their banners are the same size as ours, same design, same everything. Difference is the color background and the name of the show. Other than that, they are all identical. This started when Ms. Herbrook told Terry Metala, who's executive director of the Art Center, maybe a month ago, that our banner was in violation of the sign ordinance. Nobody had ever said that to us, never occurred to me, and we'd never had any complaints. So when that happened, I quickly looked at the ordinance, and the first thing that caught my attention was the 4 per year, 30 days per banner. We have 7 performances a year, each lasting 5 or 6 weeks. So when I talked to Mayor Blatz, that's the first thing I called to his attention. And I think fair to say the reason that is changed is because that's what I talked to him about. After, and all this has moved very quickly, then I read the ordinance and saw that there was also the problem with where it's hanged against the building. I understand staff's concern about them being placed anywhere on, hanging from trees and whatnot. What we have done and what Theater OES does is on the permanent pillars that are part of the entryway to the building is where we hang them. So the request that it be allowed to be hanging from posts is posts that are part of the permanent entryway to the building. And I think that eliminates the problems that Mr. Mullane spoke to. I guess I would request, we're talking about not-for-profit arts organizations. And speaking of art, this is wonderful art you have hanging here this month. I would ask that it be $25. Again, each banner is identical in size, location. It's about, the only thing we advertise is the show that's coming up next. And last is I suggested that in the resolution portion, you add a whereas, speaking to the importance of the arts to Ojai. I think that's both true and gives additional support for the ordinance. With that, I would simply add that starting on Sunday night is Season 3 of Jammin' at the Art Center. 10 concerts, Sunday afternoons at 6 o'clock, starting with Nathan McEwen. And in honor of my beard, Fiddler on the Roof opens July 12th. 5 weekends, Friday and Saturdays at 8, Sundays at 2. And hope everybody comes down. It's going to be a great show. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. Is there anybody else from the public who would like to address this Yes, please.
I'm Ann Scanlon, 540 Del Oro. I would like to also recommend to this commission what Mr. Clafe just said, because I represent the museum, and if you read in the paper, the museum just received funds from the city because of our financial situation. And one of the things that's inherent in what we do is to try to cut costs as much as we can. Now, because we are a National Historic Landmark, we cannot hang anything on the building. It is not allowed. And if you drive down Ojai Avenue, if you don't know it's a museum, there's a little over the arch that says Ojai Valley Museum. A lot of people still think it's a church. A lot of people don't even know we have a museum. So banners are very important to us, especially when we have our exhibits. Now, we have 2 posts that have been there forever, one at one side of the property and one on the other side of the property. And we've had the same size banners that are created in-house by our graphic designer, Fred Kidder. They're always done tastefully. I don't know that we've ever had them reviewed by the city. But I would think that if we have to be charged a fee, that we would appreciate the $25 amount, because the banners are not large that we put up, and they're colorful, and that's the only advertising that we have for the museum, are those 2 banners. And even when we don't have exhibits, we take the banners down so there's nothing there that indicates that we are a museum, except for that little bit over the arch. So we would really appreciate your considering for the museum, for being a nonprofit, that we have a $25 charge, if there has to be a charge, for each of our little banners that we have up 4 times a year. And so we'd appreciate your considering that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. Anybody else from the public like to talk?
I feel like I should jump up here. I'm Frank with the Ojai Youth Entertainers Studio. And we do some banners over our entryway from time to time. And one of the things that's most important to us is that we're moving these shows so quickly. We do a 2-week show or a 3-week show, and they come in, they come out, they come in, they come out. And the only way we can let people know about that, is to put a little banner out there. We do it we use Steve Grimmett every time. The banner's always 16 by 2. It hangs over our little entryway. And it's really the way that we let people know what's going on in our building. We try and reach out with email. We do a lot of advertising in the Ojai Valley News, but then there's that, putting it in the over the building is so important to let people know what's going on. I'm not completely, kind of tuned in to what's going on. I just know that the banners are something that's very important to us. I've been alerted to it, and so I'm here to kind of reach out and say we need those banners. They help so much for us to put them up and say, here's what we are. We don't have a sign in front of the building. We don't, there's nothing on the building that says who we are. So those banners kind of reach out, and we've got our logo on them, and people can drive by and say, oh, that's where that's going on. Annie's here, or whatever. So anyway.
Excuse me, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need more than 8 banners a year?
I wouldn't think so. Yeah. Yeah, eight's probably more than enough. I just ordered 3 banners today. And one of them is kind of a standard banner that tells that classes are forming. And then the other 7 would be the shows that we do. We do 3 kids shows a year. We do a spring show, a summer show, a fall show. So that's, we've got the standard banner. Then we've got 4 other banners would be more than enough. Yeah, that would be great if we had the ability to do that.
Frank, what's your last name?
Eller, E-L-L-E-R.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Stella.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Anybody else from the audience? Thank you.
Susan Stinsmulen-Amond, and I'm on the Arts Commission. And I didn't know any of this, but it seems like the arts need help in any way that the city can help them. And charging them less fees for banners seems appropriate. And also the banners are most likely going to be appropriate because they're about the arts, and it's not like they're selling sandwiches or, there's a sale or something. It's announcing a cultural event in town. So it seems like that grouping should be maybe considered in a different way. Signage seems like a bag of worms to me, but anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I can make a motion to close the public
I'll
hearing.
move we close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing closed.
Commission.
Go ahead.
I'd like to offer some historical perspective on this. I was on the commission when we passed this banner ordinance. Our intent was to have it apply to for-profit businesses only. It never occurred to us when we were talking about these banners that nonprofits would be involved at all. So as far as I'm concerned, we should just exempt all the nonprofits because I don't think they really fall within the purview of this. What drove this ordinance in the first place was you see this if you drive out of town into the county part when you get down to Miramonte down there. You see a lot of businesses throwing up all kinds of weird signage advertising their businesses, and as that started to grow, we on the commission got concerned that people would try and do the same thing in Ojai, and that was the intent behind putting this up there. But it was really intended for for-profit businesses, really not to impact any of the nonprofits at all.
So along the same lines that John just brought up, I'm wondering if nonprofits could be a separate group, and maybe there's an annual fee, but it's a very low, reasonable fee, because there will be some staff time. But at the same time, we agree that we want to promote the arts, and we're dealing with nonprofits. And there's a set of criteria, and I mean, that's just a suggestion, rather than them coming in, 8 times for a permit every year, every time that sign changes. Is that what they've been doing so far, or they should be?
That's what they should be doing.
Right.
Yes.
So to eliminate that, all that paperwork and just the time and having to do it, if maybe on the application or the criteria, the sign is a certain size and it meets, a certain color palette or whatever, but they're allowed to do it only up to 8 times a year, but it's like once a year you come in at the beginning of the year, whenever you start, and to streamline it. And then as far as where to mount it and how to mount it, and I'm not sure, it seems like at the museum, if I remember right, it was on the, was that on the exterior wall where you have your banner?
No, sometimes
It's on a,
we have a one-day event.
okay.
Like our
Could you come up to the podium,
Sorry,
please?
yeah, thank you.
Our permanent banners that we have, or our exhibits, are on 2 poles, one on the west side of the property and the one on the east side of the property. And they're not large banners at all. You see them hanging there every time. In fact, we're having a new exhibit coming up next week, and so we'll have a banner on each one of these posts, but they're very small. It's not one of these giant banners at all. Once in a while, maybe twice a year, we have a special sale, like a treasure sale, and because we can't put it on the building, we have to put it out on the wall. But that's usually just like one day, maybe 2 days. So that's what we're talking about as far as it would be a larger banner than what we have normally up. And, we don't have it up for 30 days. If we have something on the wall, it's not there for 30 days. It's there for maybe 1 or 2 days. So we'd like to have an exemption on that if we could, as long as it isn't up a long period of time. Because as I said, that's the only way that we can advertise what we do, which is very important to our cash flow. And that's what we're trying to accomplish, is to have a better cash flow. So I agree with Susan, I think, and with Mr. Merck, that the nonprofits should be separated out. It's not the same as having signs for businesses. And nonprofits in this community struggle a great deal, so we would like all the help we can get. Thank you.
Thank you. So it actually, you know, and I'm looking in this, what is that, section 1, number 4, that, you know, a wall or other structure as approved by the director could be appropriate, or it says a front fence. Am I reading this right? Let's see. A banner business may, this is a banner business, sign may be placed on a front fence, wall, or other structure approved by the director. Is that correct? No, number 4? That's on page, attachment B, page 2 of 4.
Are you looking at number 4?
Yeah, number 4. So it sounds like, you know, as long as the director approved that, that's okay at this point, if I'm reading that correctly.
No.
No?
Has to be with, if it's further than 50 feet.
Could you come up to the podium, please?
I believe if something is within 50 feet of the public right-of-way,
Oh,
it
then you can do
cannot
it.
be
Oh.
approved by the.
Okay.
So I'm not
Mhm.
sure that works.
Okay. So maybe this is still, you know, something that we could look at. And then, you know, I'm not sure that this is for every nonprofit. Maybe this is nonprofits that are related to theater, you know, the arts. Because I mean,
Actually, that brings up a question to
Mhm.
me because I do banners for Scott Eichert with the Chamber of Commerce for their Holiday Home Look-In, their Art Walk, for the American Legion, who does nonprofit food, and then you have your Christmas tree sales down here, their nonprofit Lions Club. I mean, that's just a couple to mention, that
Right.
there's a lot of them.
Yeah, if I may, there's perhaps some opportunity to broaden the fee discussion and maybe a reduced fee for nonprofits to not just these banners that are addressed in the zoning ordinance amendment, but banners in general in the city. And so that could be something that comes out of this discussion that I could pass along to the city council, which will be acting quickly on the fee schedule. They'll be acting on Tuesday night. But the intent of the changes were really focused at, and it says right in the revised wording, at entities that are sponsoring multiple or changing events, shows, programs, and activities, such as plays, art shows, and music events. So I don't think the intent of the scope was to really broaden it out to all the different types of nonprofit events that may occur. It was really focused on the arts, theaters, those, and it's very narrowly defined to benefit those types of uses.
and I agree with that we should, you know, keep those parameters.
I would suggest that we amend that paragraph 4 to just, starting in the second line, just simply remove the words between posts or, so that it would read, shall not hang from trees. And the implication would be, it would be okay to hang from posts if we remove the words saying it shall not hang from posts.
All right, I'm just adding for information. I'm not arguing here. I just want to make it clear to the commission, or make sure the commission's clear on what the changes relate to. So these standards that are in here apply to all banner signs, but we've added language that kind of separates out these types of uses that we heard from tonight from everything else that deals with banner signs. So if you just change the wording that you suggested, then that's going to be applicable not just to these 3 entities, but citywide. And that's one of the things that you do get concern over, temporary posts and just haphazard display. So if the intent is to do that citywide, then that's fine. If the intent is to have that allowance more specific to these special uses that deal with plays, art shows, and music events, then that needs to be added to the change, that if you're going to change that item 4, is your intent to change it citywide, or is it for just these types of events? And we can come up with a language that would reflect that.
I think there's also, you know, the way the banner's designed. I think at the museum, it's a single post with it's not a double post at the museum. So you know, it's one excuse me, one single post that you're talking about in the museum. So, you know, there's posts and posts. No, it doesn't. It's like a mast. So.
Yeah, back to the suggestion on the change, if the intent is just to benefit these types of uses, then I would leave 4 alone, but add a sentence at the end of 4 that gives some special allowance for these types of uses, that they may be allowed on posts subject to the discretion of the director or something along those lines, so that it's clear that we still have 2 separate types of standards, one that apply elsewhere in the city and one that apply to these specific types of events.
And I think the checks and balance occurs when it's subject to the director, because if someone just says from some art, nonprofit art, musical endeavor, decides they want to plant a post anywhere, obviously that needs to be looked at and considered as it pertains to fitting within the character of whatever we're looking at. So I agree that sounds good. Adding that sentence that would keep it specific to the arts. I like the idea of also specific to the arts, adding this annual fee that Commissioner Nolan alluded to. I'm thinking, you know, we're talking up to 8 signs. I think a $200 annual fee would be appropriate and help promote the arts. There may require a little more time from the staff than they could actually recoup, but maybe that's something the city should be doing. So. We'll keep that in mind. Thank you. Lawrence,
Suppose an arts organization has...
Could you come up to the podium, please?
Suppose an arts organization has only one event.
Well, what I would like, what I personally would recommend would be a general policy that we try to recoup the city costs, and so that I don't think I have the information right now to set what the dollar amount would be, but I would like to express a general intent that it reflect the actual city costs. And I think with Commissioner Nolan's suggestion that there be an annual, one annual application that would cover, you know, multiple banners, that seems like it would be a very efficient way to accomplish that.
I'd like to see us just not review these banners at all for nonprofits. I think we should just let these organizations do whatever they need to do to advertise their events, and really not, you know, if we don't get staff involved reviewing these things, there's really no point to having a fee for it. And that way, these organizations could all do what they need to do.
Yeah, myself personally, I've seen these banners and I've never been offended. They've always been very tastefully done, you know, and it's mirrors what they're putting on, and you know, they're attracting an audience, and you know, I think I kind of agree with that, and with Commissioner Merck.
So you're suggesting they just be exempt from having to get any permit at all, as long as they conform to the standards that would be.
Yeah, I'm just saying that they shouldn't need to be reviewed, you know.
That's interesting, because that cuts out the time equation in terms of cost to the city. It allows them the freedom to do it. I'm thinking that it would have to be, and I like the idea actually, as it pertains to what I'm hearing from these particular organizations. I think there's some unintended consequences that could arise from it from other organizations. So we would have to be very, very careful how this would be worded, crafted.
Yeah, I think it's really important to distinguish between for-profit business and nonprofit to begin with.
So maybe what we would need, we'll just assume that we were going to do the annual application and proposal, and maybe staff could look and say, okay, this is how much time we think it would be, and we could get an idea of what that actual cost would be. And I'm hearing what John's saying, and I mean, I like that, but at the same time, I know the Arts Center and the Yes group and the museum, and I think everything they've done is tasteful. I agree with Stephen. It's like, okay, what about everyone else? What does that mean? And then all of a sudden you start losing integrity and it starts getting messy and what have you. So how do you, and we don't want to get into the whole thing of having to control it and do enforcement, I don't think. So maybe there's kind of a nice balance where the rate is covers staff time, but it's very reasonable, promotes the arts, but at the same time, there's a little bit of control so that we know what's going up. That's my thought.
Do we care what goes up? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I know I'm not saying these nonprofits, I think what they do is very tasteful, but there are other people and I've seen business ones that have gone up that have been, like you said, originally this whole thing originated because of what you saw going on in another community and you didn't want that coming into Ojai. So, I mean, I like the freedom, and at the same time, there might be a nice balance where we have, define what those banners are going to be, and at the same time keep the cost fair and reasonable. And that's just my thought.
If we, consider a one-off fee of, say, $200 a year, we still have the question if a nonprofit does one performance a year.
The Ojai studio artists in particular, I'm thinking of.
That's something that needs to be considered.
Mr. Cleef has a question.
Two things. One is in terms of the concern about organizations that aren't represented here today. It could be limited, and it should be probably, because you don't want the Art Center putting up banners wherever we feel like throughout the city. So if it's limited to the property of the facility having the show, then that takes care of all the wild cards that you're concerned about. So, we can only put up a banner at the Art Center if we're talking about an Art Center event. So I think that might, and the other thing is in terms of organizations that have but one per year, if you insist on, I like John's suggestion a whole lot, that we not be charged at all. But if you're going to charge, you can give the groups an option. It's either X per banner or, $200 a year, and that covers everybody. Thank you.
The sign ordinance already has a provision that off-site signage is not allowed.
So, Sherry, this brings, you had mentioned the chamber, was that?
She's talking about Ojai Studio Artists, Holiday Home Look-In, they do it once a year.
And that's all advertised in front of the chamber's office?
No, it's advertised in front of, the Holiday Home Look-In, their banners in front of the home.
Oh, okay.
Or wherever, I don't know where the Ojai Studio, they actually are off-site.
They are off-site.
Because they're directional. Mm-hmm.
I think the garden tour falls in that too.
Well, again, just for clarity of discussion, the proposed changes don't cover all different types of nonprofits. I don't think the intent was to cover the chamber or some of the other things that you've just mentioned. It was very specific to entities whose principal activity is presenting or sponsoring multiple or changing events, shows, programs, and activities, plays, art shows, and music events. So that is that's the extent of what these changes would apply. And I'm hearing a couple different things from the commission in terms of approaches. I think the fees, my guess on that, given my recommendation on that, given what I heard from the commission, if we're allowing up to 8 signs a year, perhaps the fee should either be 0, if we want to provide a 0 fee, but still have a review of signs, or a fee of $25 per review would recoup some of the staff time, and that would be, if they went 8 banners a year, that's a maximum of $200. If they're less than that, then that's less than $200. But that would still provide some payment to the city for the staff time, but it's pretty reasonable. But if the commission feels very strongly there should be no fee for these types of uses, then that's a recommendation you can pass on to the council. But that's different than saying that they're exempt, which means we're not looking at them at all. Right. And if the intent is to keep the fee low, then there's a way to zero out the fee, to recommend that the fee be 0 for these types of entities, or something very reasonable that they wouldn't object to. And then, as far as the process from here, I'm going to need to hear from the commission which direction you want to go, because there's a couple different ideas out there. And then depending on what direction that is, I can let the commission know if I think that I have enough information to take a revised ordinance to the city council, or that we should really continue the item, come back with some specific language for the commission to consider before recommending it go on to the city council.
I just have a question. If there was a consideration for a no fee for non-profit, if you recovered the fees through for-profit by raising the fees there a little bit, would that?
You could always make that recommendation to city council. I mean, honestly, the experience that I've had here is that, in particular with signage, signs do not cost that much. When the fees are high, people just look at this, the reasonableness. You're charging $200 for a sign permit, and the sign only costs $100. So we did raise the fees from $90 to $120 last year, and we considered raising them again this year, and there was a lot of pushback from the community, as many of you are very well aware of. So,
I think that right now the Arts Center, Lenny's company is spending. You're doing 8 shows at $90 a pop for a sign review. That's what, $720 a year?
That's if they came in and got permits, but that's not happening.
In theory?
Yes, in theory.
We're effectively cutting that way less than half. So I think we're justified in asking for some compensation for the city, and also to maintain some overview of that. I'm a little apprehensive of just letting it go on good grace. Not that these particular groups would have that problem with that, but I think it's just good practice to keep it within the boundaries and prudence of the staff here. So I would like to see us maybe establish this for specifically as described here. I would even take it, maybe even the description, consider instead of saying art shows, I would maybe the wording could be along the lines of theater art, fine arts, music, events. Okay, that art is a very broad term. This gives it a little more specificity. So that's maybe something that we should consider. So I'd like to follow up on those lines. Does that give us a little more direction and maybe a little less ambiguity in this discussion we're having? You think, Rob? Yeah.
I think those are very good points.
No, I think it's good too. And then Rob, you had mentioned, or we had just previously mentioned the possibility of, maybe there's there's a base $25 fee. So if you if you've met this criteria, whether theater, music, or fine arts, and it was one banner, let's say it was $25, and if you were going to do up to 8, your maximum fee would be the $200 a year. Yeah, I think you could have both in there, depending on what the organization is will be showing that for that year.
Mr. Clafe, would you like to?
On behalf of OES and the Art Center, at least, we'd perfectly be happy paying the $200 a year. As we would love to be in compliance. Again, we didn't know we weren't until 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we would love to be in compliance. $200 for the year is more than reasonable. We're fine with it, especially in the spirit of getting something done, rather than endlessly debating the finer points of who's exempt and who's not exempt, what the possibility you're opening up if you exempt us. We would just as soon pay a $200 annual fee and go forward. Again, the concern that's not been addressed is being able to put it on the posts of the existing entryways is what we're talking about for the Art Center and OES at least. Not freestanding posts, not posts wherever we want to put them, but that are part of the entryways. So we're happy to pay the $200. We'd like to be in compliance. We will, be happy to talk to Sherry to find out what we need to do to be in compliance, what staff needs. If we can just email them whatever it is we're about to send off to the printer, so they have what we got before the printer gets it, and we can all move forward and quickly. This has moved remarkably fast so far. We would like to continue that speed. Thank you.
I was say just a comment in regarding the posts in front of the Art Center. They're not freestanding, they're not separate, they're integral to the building. So I would call that the building, architecturally speaking. Okay.
Any other discussion points?
Well, just for my own sake, Rob, how does that affect the museum, who has a single pole and this flag-like banner, evidently, that they use? How would you interpret that at staff?
I think it's a good idea to add a sentence to item 4 that we've been talking about on page 204 that would provide some opportunity for these types of entities to use posts that are more or less permanent, that are architecturally integrated with the building, and that subject to the approval of the director, and add that sentence. So if that's what the full commission would support, or the majority of the commission, then I would have you note that in your motion, and anything else that you want to add with respect to the fees. You might want to make a separate motion on that, just to keep it separate from the ordinance.
Okay.
So do we want to make a motion? As Rob said, maybe 2 motions, one with the ordinance and then one with the fees.
Yes, we have the...
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that the first one would be, I'm sorry, I lost.
Okay, real quick.
Yeah.
Is he adopting the resolution for each motion, or how are we doing that?
No, there would be one motion on the resolution with any changes to the ordinance that the commission would like to make, and then the second motion I would recommend would be making a recommendation to the city council on the fee.
Okay.
Any reduction in fee from
and it
the.
doesn't have to do with the resolution.
No.
Thanks.
All right, so I move that we adopt resolution number PC 13-12, recommending that the City Council adopt TA 13-01 with some amendments, and adopt the associated CEQA determination. And then that amendment would be, and that especially item 4 be modified to allow posts upon approval by the director.
Should we have a separate roll call and a second on that?
Well, you need a second, but there's also the concept that Commissioner Foster brought up about changing the examples from such as plays, art shows, and music events to theater art, fine art, and music.
And that needs to be included in number 4 under that exemption or that special allowance.
That
So
would,
that it's separated from regular business banners, correct?
that's correct, and that's clear. What I was looking at is item 2
Right.
and item 3, where we have the such as clause. If the commission wants to change that to the language that, or the wording that Commissioner Foster used, then that should be part of the motion as well.
Okay, I accept the language proposed by Commissioner Foster with respect to changing out art shows for the theater arts and fine arts and retaining plays and music events.
Second?
I'll second that. Are you finished?
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
All right. I just wanted to make sure before I vote on this that that's included in number 4 also. In other words, the wording that includes the theater, music, and fine art, multiple or changing events.
Okay, so you're talking about the posts.
Right. And this is on number 4, but number 4 relates to all businesses, but at the bottom we wanted to add that extra sentence that would allow a special allowance for the theater, music, and fine arts, multiple and changing events. So I think that needs to be included in that additional clause.
Okay, so let me just understand you correctly, so that you would, in your view, you wouldn't allow banners to hang from posts for-profit businesses, but you would allow banners to hang from posts for nonprofits.
Correct. Nonprofits that met that theater, music, and fine arts
All right.
criteria.
All right. So,
Subject to approval of the director.
Subject to approval of the
Subject
director.
to approval of the director.
Absolutely.
you wouldn't, so just to ask you, so you wouldn't be satisfied with just leaving number 4 with a blanket subject to the approval of the director, post subject to the approval of the director?
No, I think the whole point of this is that we were trying to be specific for these multiple or changing events in the theater, music, and fine arts.
That was my understanding
Yeah.
of the
All right.
concept when it came up, and I
Yeah.
thought
Okay.
that that was implicit in your motion, but if it wasn't, then that would be good to
No,
clarify.
I'm open to this. I just wanted to make a motion because it seemed like we just needed to move.
Yeah, it's okay.
And so, okay, so I would, I'm actually not clear on how to say it, because right now with number 4, it says shall not hang between posts. So I'm not sure how we can
Well, just,
come up with something that is flatly contradictory to shall not.
it's similar to what we've done with items 2 and 3, where you have a standard that's for all other banner signs, and then you have a notwithstanding the foregoing. So it would add a sentence that says, notwithstanding the
Oh, there you go.
foregoing, these types of uses would get the ability to mount on posts subject to the discretion of the director.
Okay, thank you. So then I would like to add to number 4, notwithstanding the foregoing, that banners may hang from other locations on approval of the director
For those types of uses.
for the types of uses, including and adopting the language for number 2, for activities, programs and activities such as plays, fine arts, theater arts, and music events.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty clear, or I'm very clear actually on what the intent is, I think. So as long as the person that seconded the motion is comfortable with that amendment, then I think staff has our marching orders, and we'll get the language dialed in. I think I have a good feel for what the
I'd
commission.
love to second that.
Okay.
Roll call. Osborne?
Yes.
Foster?
Yes.
Merck?
Yes.
Nicklin?
Yes.
Nolan?
Yes.
And we need a second motion for the fees?
Right.
I make a motion that we recommend to the city council that they adopt a fee structure that is not exceeding city costs, and that they consider an annual fee for multiple banners throughout the year.
Second.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
And well, before they do that, just for clarity, are
Well,
we
like-
talking for clarity of staff, are we talking just these types of uses, multiple changing events, shows, programs, and activities such as theater art, fine art, plays, and music events, or are we talking all sorts of banners?
The first one. At least that's what I'm leaning towards.
Thank you. I need to specify the type of events such as theater, fine arts, music, and plays.
Second.
So, just so I understand, we're not describing a specific fee at this point in the motion. Oh, I'm sorry. You're not prescribing a specific fee at this point.
That's my motion. If you want to propose a specific fee, then I suggest you vote against this motion, and then we'd take up another motion.
Mhm.
It's really up to the city council to set the.
Let the city council
Well, that's
work with that.
true.
We could do that.
And we're just making a recommendation, right? So we could recommend the fee schedule that we discussed, but they would actually set that fee schedule.
It was either $200 or $25.
Well, anywhere between 25 and 200, depending on how many banners per year.
I like being specific. And then they have
something to go off of.
They have the
Yeah.
flexibility to do.
Right.
Okay, then let it die.
Right.
So you got a motion and a second. You should take a roll call on that, and it sounds like there may be interest in a different motion.
Was there a second?
No.
Yes, I second.
Oh, you did? Oh, sorry. Lawrence did.
Osborne?
Yes.
Foster?
No.
Merck?
Yes.
Nicklin?
Yes.
Nolan?
No.
Motion passes.
Okay, so we'll just take the concept to the city council, and staff will probably recommend a fee because they'll want a dollar amount. So I'll come up with something that reflects it. But I think it was helpful just to have the discussion, hear from the representatives, and we'll summarize that when I present it to the city council.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to item number 7. It's revision to the Public Art Code, Ojai Municipal Code, Title 4, Chapter 16, Public Arts. Open to staff.
I think I'm going to turn to Steve McClary, who is going to be presenting the staff report. And I think it's been a while since Steve's been before the Planning Commission, so welcome, Steve.
It has been a while, maybe ever. Chair Nicklin, members of the commission, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I am Steve McClary. I am the liaison to the Arts Commission and the assistant to the city manager. And while we're doing introductions, I'd also like to point out that I have two members from our Arts Commission who are here tonight, Commissioner Barbara Hirsch and Commissioner Susan Stinsmuller-Amond. And I believe Commissioner Stinsmuller-Amond will also be making some comments once I am done with my report. This for you tonight is an accumulation of a lot of work that has been done mostly by the Public Art Committee, but also a little bit by staff, with a lot of input from the other members of the Arts Commission as well. We've had a lot of discussions and a lot of massaging, and the intent of this was to try to take the existing public art code and try to improve it and make a few tweaks where the Arts Commission felt that it could be improved and maybe wasn't working as good as it possibly could be. So, and as we noted, we've been working on this for several years, and the commission, the Arts Commission did give its tentative approval, and so now we are bringing it forward to the Planning Commission so that we can get your review and comments prior to taking this to the City Council. And I should note that if there are significant comments from the Planning Commission, we may take this back to the Arts Commission to get a little further comment and direction from them. But if it looks like the Planning Commission is largely okay with what is proposed, then we will be looking to schedule this to go forward to City Council for its consideration. So the changes that we are considering, there are many in here, but there are really two main areas that have caused concern to both members of the Arts Commission, staff, and also to a certain extent the applicants as well. One of them is really more of a, I guess you could call it an in-house or a procedural issue, and that has to do with the currently formed and the Public Art Review Committee, which is frequently referred to by its acronym of PARC, P-A-R-C. And as you can see, that is a bit of a confusing acronym since we've got a Parks Commission and park and things like that. So a lot of times the acronym itself can be a little confusing to folks. But the real issue with the park isn't the acronym, it's that it does not reflect the actual process that's set forth in the code. My understanding, and this was prior to my tenure here, is that sometime after the Public Art Code was adopted, there was a determination that there needed to be some mechanism that would kind of help move the project along, and I think the idea was to avoid having an applicant who had a project that required public art from having to bounce back and forth between the Planning Commission and the Arts Commission before they could get approval. So the Public Art Review Committee, from what I understand, was formed, and as that currently stands, it has one member of the Planning Commission. The current member is your Vice Chair, John Merck, one member of the Arts Commission, and then there's also a member of the public at large who has an interest in, and some background and expertise in arts, who is also chosen for the Public Art Review Committee. So that the park right now has the role of reviewing private developments that require public art. So again, the main issue with the park is that it is not codified. So we're technically not following the process that is established in the city code. The commission is recommending eliminating park and establishing a new committee that would take its place, and we've come up with a new name for this committee, which is the Committee to Approve Public Art, or you could call that CAPA. The makeup of CAPA would be similar to park, but it would be an expanded membership. The recommendation is that it would be 3 members of the Arts Commission, appointed by the Arts Commission, 1 member of the Planning Commission, appointed by the Planning Commission, and then 1 member of the public who's knowledgeable about art, who would also be appointed by the Arts Commission. The CAPA would also review both public and private art projects and then make a recommendation to the Arts Commission for final approval. Currently, the park gives final approval to public art for private developments, and I'm sorry, I had a little error in my staff report here. So park gives final approval to private developments. What we're proposing for the CAPA is that CAPA would review both public and private developments. So there would be a little additional step for public projects, but not for private projects. They currently do go through that committee. So I do need to note that correction in my staff report. I noted in there that I stated that Park gives final approval to public art for private developments, and so this would be an additional step in the approval process for private developments. It's an additional step in the process for public developments. The other concern, and I would say that this is probably the meatier issue, and the one that has really caused concern for the Arts Commission as well as some applicants. The current code only requires that the public art be installed prior to the certificate of occupancy. This has led, as you are probably aware, in several cases, the applicant has pretty much held off making a decision for a variety of reasons, sometimes financial, sometimes it's timing or whatnot, but the decision on the artist, the art, where it will go, sometimes gets left to the last minute. This can lead to not the most desirable of circumstances. In fact, it can lead to a terrible condition that is often referred to as plop art. And plop art is, as it sounds like, you just take a piece of art and you just pop it right there and you're done. Obviously, I think what the city is looking for is artwork that is integrated with the building, with the architecture, which also enhances the building and enhances the public experience. So what is being recommended is that the artwork concept would need to be approved prior to the issuance of the building permit. That puts the onus on the developer to make an earlier commitment in the process in terms of what their artwork is going to be, and triggers the approval requirement for that much earlier in the process. It's very difficult, I would say, for the applicant as well as staff and commissioners when you have a business who they have done everything else that they need to do. They've gone through a lengthy construction process. They've probably had delays and setbacks, et cetera, and they're ready to open, but there's just that one little matter left out there of the public art. It's difficult to tell that business at that point, no, you can't open because you don't have your public art in place, but that is what the code requires. So I think it spares some pain and agony down the road by requiring the commitment earlier in the process. In addition, one thing that I wanted to note that came up at the most recent Arts Commission meeting when we discussed this, and actually it's kind of interesting how we came onto this. We had an applicant that came forward. This is for the Wild Tennis Academy, and the initial determination by staff was that they were subject to the public art requirements. However, upon further review, and fortunately it was the applicant that noted this, the code allows exception, thank you, exclusion, for schools that are both private and public schools. The Arts Commission would like to see if this requirement could be removed. We do not believe at this time that the city could require public art for public school development because that falls under the domain of the state. However, we do believe that the city could legally require private schools to have that public art requirement. So that is an additional wrinkle for the Planning Commission's consideration. And then I don't know how much detail you would like me to go through. I can go through the remaining sections of the ordinance and cite some of the changes there and the justifications for that. The two main ones that I discussed were the creation of the committee to approve public art, and actually codifying that process, which now goes through Park. And of course, the other change, in fact, let me get to that just so that we're quite clear. If you turn to page 8 of attachment A, section 4-16.213 is the application procedures for placement of artwork on private property. And if you go about halfway down through that paragraph, it states that the artist or artists may be selected by any of the methods described above in section 4-16-211. Early selection of an artist or art consultant is required. The city, the responsible party shall submit an art concept design to be reviewed by CAPA and a final design to be approved by the Arts Commission prior to the issuance of a building permit for the project. I just want to emphasize that because that is the key change here. Again, just moving that earlier on the process to try to get a little better integration with the artwork that is proposed and the project itself. I'd be happy to go through the remaining details in the ordinance if that is the Commission's pleasure, or I could turn it over to Commissioner Stinsmuller and Amond for her comments.
Steve, I have a question. Is there a, I know that there's a $300,000 mark as far as the development goes that triggers whether, an art piece will be required, but is there a dollar amount stipulated for that piece?
Yeah, it's a percentage.
Oh, that's right. I think I do remember reading that. Thanks.
And
Yeah.
I believe it's 2% for the
That's
first.
right. Yeah.
Let me get to that.
Where's that? No, it's not. There it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 2% of the first $1 million of the value of the project, and 1% of any excess over
Right.
$1 million of the total building valuation.
Good. And regarding the private schools, or schools in general, were they originally exempt because, where they didn't have the funds to provide it, or do you know what the reasoning was?
No idea.
Okay, I'm just
Perhaps
curious.
one of the commissioners
Okay.
might.
Okay, good. Susan knows. Sure.
The Monty Witters,
Could you come to the podium, please?
the legal counsel, Monty Witters at that time, which was like 2002, 2003, put it in, and we didn't question it because there was a lot of, question and controversy about the whole thing coming to be. So we didn't really study it the way, and there's plenty of schools in the United States that have public art, and it's a great place to have public art
Right.
around with children.
Sure. Okay.
Be happy to answer any other questions.
I guess like to talk with the Arts Committee people, but I'm a little concerned about having to get the public art nailed down before the building permit gets released. I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with that, because my experience on the Arts Commission is the artists actually need to see what the building's going to look like and where it's going to be and so on. It's a little hard to do that from plans for a lot of people. I could see having a concept in place, before the permit, but
I'll let Commissioner
Yeah.
Stinsmuller and Amond address that.
Just plain out, typically, the best projects happen when the artists are brought on. The artist or a public art consultant who knows about how to read plans and how to negotiate with designers and architects and all of that. So somebody has to encourage the vision for the developer to say, okay, we're going to commit to, a team would possibly say, these 3 sites would be a good place for artwork. We're not sure what it is. We have a few artists in mind. The public art consultant maybe brings in some names. The vital part of this is that all the players are in sync on it, and I've talked to you all before about it, is that we need to have what would happen similar, as I understand it, to what happens with you all when somebody brings a concept design to you. It's not perfectly clear. You very often offer guidance to them about how they might proceed, knowing what the city expects, and also with your careers in design and et cetera. So theoretically, the developer would have their either lead artist or their public art consultant with them advising where the artwork might be. And they would bring that before CAPA. CAPA would then look at the initial ideas for what it would be and say, yeah, that's a good idea. Proceed with developing the idea and bring us an artist, or the artist could be there, you know, that could change. But, and then the developer would come back after you all had seen that they have a plan for artwork on the plan. And so you could say, yeah, you've met all this criteria. You even have an idea about the artwork. You could perhaps say what you thought about it at that point, you know, design-wise. And then they would come up with the artwork, the artist, what it was going to be, and they would come back to CAPA with this stuff. CAPA would, with their proposal, CAPA would approve it, and then they would recommend, not approve it, they would recommend to the Arts Commission that it be approved. And then, once again, there would be a presentation either by the members of the representatives from CAPA that are part of the Arts Commission would present. Most likely the developer or his or her agent would have to be there to present for the Arts Commission to approve it. Theoretically, they wouldn't have to go through all the details of what the, you know, like doing it all over again, because it had been fine-tuned and reduced to the essentials for the Arts Commission to approve it. It is more time.
And this is all occurring before the building permit gets issued, right? Is that the idea?
That there is artwork on board before the building permit, yes. Do you see a problem with that?
Well, it just, I don't know how comfortable the artists are going to be with that, but
Why do you say that?
don't they have to see the building and
No.
see the site? And
They see
work with
plans,
it?
they see a plan for the site.
Yeah.
And most people, you know, a lot of people, artists have been chosen from here, so all they have to do is a drive-by. But most artists that do public art know how to read plans, or enough to be good about doing it and understanding space and size.
So you're comfortable with that whole concept?
Yes, yeah.
I have a comment. Susan, I agree with you. Typically, the whole you've gone through design development, you've gone through construction documents, you've gone through plan check prior to getting a building permit. So there's no reason why the artist, who, if they're brought in from the beginning, is, you know, you've got the architect, the landscape architect, the interior designer, you've got the artist, you have the, and maybe the general contractor and the developer and who, the engineers. But you've got your team, and that artist is an integral part of that whole design development process, or should be,
That's
ideally.
Right. That's right. And so it's
Yeah.
not like,
Right.
you know, if they know more or less than another, then
Right.
there's the team to say, hey, listen, you know,
Exactly.
what do you think about this? Or
Yeah.
could I do this? My experience with public art is that. It happens in many different ways, but the sooner it's on, the better. And it could be the public art consultant that's making all the decisions at first on behalf of the owner, and then brings an artist in and says, this is what you're going to do because of X, Y, Z. By the way, a good example of public art per square footage that just opened is the collection at River Park. They have more public art there in this town, and whatever you think of the development, they have some very good public art interwoven through the whole space. And it's a good example for people to see. I have a piece there. Self-promotion, sorry. I have two pieces there. But anyway, it is a good example of a place that's about the size of Ojai and has a good amount of very large public art. It's good. Anyway.
I know we've heard you speak before about this concern, addressed it, and now it's actually being formally presented to us. There's always been a concern of things getting through the approval process and then leaving the Arts Commission in the lurch when it comes to having any power over getting it done the way it should be done. So I think that I'm glad you came forward, Susan, and presented that perspective, because I was thinking along John's terms as that, it's nice to sometimes put yourself in the actual site, and then you see things a little differently perhaps, but a good artist should be able to put themselves into that vision category
They may not
and
even
work
be
it
a
out.
good artist. They may just be able to read plans. I mean, I just know.
Right. And you're not concerned so much about, do you have any flexibility after that point of the Arts Commission approves something? You're essentially giving them the green light that this is it, and releasing the project. At that point, let's say you're going to be doing some sort of evaluation of the construction, or are you completely out of it? Where does the Art Commission go from that point, once you approve the project, I guess is my question.
When it's finished, it's
You actually,
part of the
you just
whole
want to see the
checklist.
installation and, okay.
Yeah, I mean, usually we're part of that. I mean, when Trimpen was installing at the Libby Park, we were there helping them install. I mean, it's inevitable. There's that kind of, I mean, you all do that too. You cross over between
Sure.
your meetings
Well,
here.
you want to do that because
Yeah,
you
want
want
it
to
to work.
ensure that the product is what you think it should be, so.
Yeah.
Great.
And we, usually, Steve McClary has contact with the artist in terms of, the schedule and where they are in the project, and we ask for that if we're not personally know the artist, or, I mean, we can ask to go see the work in process if it's built here in town. It's got to be much better
Right.
than being left at the last hour with something that you you don't feel represents the best it could be for the public art collection for our city. I mean, that's what we all want. That's why we're volunteering to make
Sure,
this
and this
work.
ensures that right from the conceptual beginning of the approval process, you're involved, and the process begins at that point through completion of installation. So, makes sense, so, thank you.
There are a few more details that just sort of at the follow-up to make sure that the city has a relationship with the developer in terms of conservation, insurance, contractual tie-ins, so that maintenance is done by the owner. I don't know, I think the biggest things are really what Steve McClary already defined. I have been on this longer than anybody, working on the first ordinance, which was passed in 2003. I think the representation on the committee, the idea there of 3 people from the Arts Commission is preferably, they would be the Public Art Committee, those who would know most about art in the public spaces, but that's going to depend on representation at any point in time. But they're the ones that have this code memorized. They know how to operate on this and what's expected. So, I think that that kind of intensity is needed to also make the work succeed, the public art process succeed. And that everybody in the city knows, everybody, this community development department and planning, everybody knows what we expect, what the code expects, and we can make it work. So, I think that's.
It's clear.
Any other?
So what is, besides the purpose of discussion, Rob, what would you like to hear from us? Anything more, or is there actually there's no resolution?
No, so this is, this, and I'm glad you brought that up. This isn't a change to the zoning code, so you're not acting in a formal advisory action to the city council. It's not like we're doing a text amendment to the zoning code. Right. This is a change to another section of or another title of our municipal code. So I think what Mr. McClary is looking for and the Arts Commission is looking for is just input from the Planning Commission that staff can then pass along to the City Council when they consider the ordinance. And the only thing I'd add to what was said thus far tonight is if this change goes forward, because it's a fairly major major item, checkoff item for projects and developers, that in addition to clearly stating the timing and the condition of approval related to public art, we would probably in our approval letters for the first several months at least, highlight, hey, by the way, the public art requirement timing is now prior to building permit issuance, so that there were no 11th hour surprises that put everybody in a quandary. So staff, community development staff would do our best to make sure that the developers and applicants were aware of this change.
One of the issues that has always been in the past is determining that $300,000 valuation. It's like the mob shop came in at 280, and so knowing whether they're going to meet that 300,000 before you even see plans is where you're kind of tricky. But most of them you can guess, for the most part, that it's going to be an over 300,000. But there will be on occasion, once in a while, one of those iffy ones that you're going to say in those approval letters. On the chance that you meet this valuation, I don't know, anyway, quick point.
Regarding that, is there a way of, I mean, that was one of the points I forgot to mention, is that a lot of people have said, well, we can't come forth with an idea because we don't know what the valuation is yet. So we'll have to wait until that happens. So, I mean, isn't there a way of sort of...
They don't do evaluation until they have a full set of plans to review. Our plan checkers don't assign evaluation until they have a full set of plans.
You know, they have a budget.
Okay.
I mean, doesn't it seem like there'd be another way of trying to get
Well,
that sooner, so it's not something they can say an excuse for, you know?
It's a little bit of a challenge for projects that may be right around the 300,000 valuation, but that valuation is done in the initial stages of plan check. It's not at building permit issuance, so it wouldn't be as early as design review, but at least it would be early enough that they would, because usually there's multiple rounds of plan check review, and the first round of plan check is where we really get the valuation. So for a wobbler would err on the side of caution and advise them that they are likely required to do public art, that we're estimating that their valuation is going to be more than 300,000, and then if it turns out it's less than 300,000, then they won't have to expend any more money on that. But that is an implication of this timing change, is that it's...
Well, on a $300,000 project, it's $6,000 for public art, which is pretty small.
So there's a window there, though, from the time that they actually submit the plans for plan check, the construction documents, from the time that it's approved. So it's during that process that Rob's alluding to, that where they assign evaluation prior to approval, so that information can come back to you prior to approval. Does that make sense?
Prior to issuance.
The actual issuance of permit, there's a window of time prior to that actual issue of permit where they actually submit the plans. There's a timeline that proceeds with plan checking. And typically, on a project, commercial project, you're talking well over a month, fast at the quickest speed. So that gives you, from the time that they submit a construction set of plans, which is actually the proposed physicality of the building, for them to evaluate the cost, which I think Sherry does at that point in time when they submit it. There's a timeline there that you would be able to have access to the actual evaluation made by the city prior to approval, that we would know the amount.
And you'd have to, at that point, they would have to have an art plan in those plan check, in which case you would have to maybe subtract that from the valuation?
Because see, that's what Commissioner Stensby-Lehman is wanting, that first set to come in with the art.
Right. Right.
Before you're...
Well, and I think it should, because that's going to occur at the point, already at that point, you were assuming that we've gone through design review. We already have the artwork there. You've already reviewed it, in fact. We just haven't got to the point where they're presenting construction documents for the actual permitting process, okay? So it's important to understand the chronology, I think, of how that process works, because there is a window in there, that's all I'm saying, where from the time, prior to the time or issuance of permit, there is an evaluation made. And I'm assuming, along with that the artwork is presented ahead of that timeline, early in that timeline process.
Because you.
So I hope that makes sense. I think it does.
Well, I don't, quite honestly, I don't understand the whole permit process.
Sure, there's a lot of steps to it.
I've asked 10 times.
Well,
and I
you know,
still-
you explained it pretty well in terms of how you wanted to be part of the process through, that it would come to the planning commission. We would be looking at the artwork at the time that we're reviewing the design review, correct? And then at that point, it would go, if my understanding you correctly, it would go back to CAPA for review, or CAPA would be part of that process. But at one point, following the design review, the developer or the applicant would then come to the Art Commission with that same review for final approval by you. That all is happening.
You would see it first, though. You'd see
Correct.
it before the Arts Commission would see
Right,
it.
right.
So that's really important.
Right, that's right.
That you had expectations for that.
Mm-hmm. So let's say we go ahead and we approve this project, whatever it may be. They would be required to bring it to you for review prior.
To CAPA.
Okay, to CAPA, and hence then to the Art Commission itself.
For approval.
So it has to be defined, it seems, that prior to submitting for the permitting process, for plan checking process, I'm just throwing this out here, that they would, part of that submittal package would be approval of the concept by the Arts Commission. Does that make sense? Okay, because it's at that point, they now have, that becomes part of the submittal package for the actual checking of the plans, which includes evaluation of the project. I think maybe the step that where it gets a little confusing is they may be coming and saying, well, my project at design review is not worth $300,000. I think that's the slippery slope there. So something has to be in the process that says, you're close enough to where we think you need to submit us at least a concept or something to look at. I think that's the issue.
Well, that's one reason
Right.
we're asking your opinion on this. Because
Right. I mean, it's a little difficult because they could come and say, I am at $280,000, and I don't think I should do this. Well, there has to be somehow in this some sort of discretion to have the authority to say to make that determination whether it is or not.
What about if they had? What if they had to submit like a preliminary cost analysis? I mean, I do that for a lot of my projects. At at the beginning, I mean, you're using unit pricing, but you're trying to establish a budget.
At the design review level.
Yeah, you're trying to establish a budget so you kind of, your client can decide yes or no or make changes on materials or the construction or what have you. But that may be the trigger. It's close enough to 300,000, so yes, you're going to have to do it. Somehow you have to establish something. And this isn't for every project, it's for those gray projects that probably fall like between 250 and 350,000 or something. Because, you don't know until you've finished your construction documents when you're actually
Correct.
costing the exact price of that project. But you do establish, most people establish a budget somewhere along the line. And do it. That's typical.
How could you go into a project
well,
if you didn't have some idea
yeah,
of what
unless
it
you
was
had
gonna
endless funds and, but.
or how much money you had.
Exactly. So that's, maybe that's the document that gets.
A budgetary
yeah, like a preliminary cost analysis, and it's just a breakdown
on commercial projects.
Yeah.
And then the checks and balance could occur at the time of submittal, where we actually do the actual valuation in-house.
And when it comes before you, you wouldn't be approving it, but your representative would be coming back to CAPA or,
Oh,
you know,
mhm.
there's,
Mm-hmm.
your feedback would come back,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
What would you expect of the planning commission to look at the artwork, make sure that it's in the package, and see if it's compatible with the architecture?
Yeah, and you would get
basic-
information
Yeah.
from the CAPA representative, because
Mhm.
they were at the meetings with the presentations.
There you go, yeah.
And you would
Mhm.
get the information that way, and if you had feedback, of course, it would be, wanted. And also, there's some clause or some sentence in the code that says that in some cases, it could be the whole project, the art project could be submitted to the community development director for approval. So,
Mhm.
you know,
Makes
we
sense.
want it
Makes
to
sense,
work
yeah.
with the architecture and the landscape
Mhm.
design. Pardon? There is one sentence, isn't there? Unless I've, the approval process? In some situations, you know, I think it's,
I'm not sure if you're referring to the contract, but this is on page 9, under middle of the page, subparagraph C, contract between the city and responsible parties spelling out requirements for the artwork, including budget and artist recognition plaque, insurance, and maintenance, shall be executed prior to the city's formal acceptance by the community development director. Well, that's department. Not sure where else you're
no, I think
you're
it's.
talking there.
Yeah.
Because I think everything else goes through the CAPA or the respective
Okay.
commissions.
Well,
I think.
It says the community development director shall also review the artwork in its placement in
In section A is
Section 8?
A on attachment page 9, section A.
Yeah, I think you're referring to where the community development director shall review the artwork and its placement in relation to the architecture and landscaping
Yeah,
elements.
that's what I meant.
And may refer the application to the planning commission for approval pursuant to section 9.9-4.07 of the Ojai Municipal Code.
Yeah, I mean, that could happen.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the inclusion in our application form of a preliminary cost or project valuation estimate is probably just a line item that we could add to our application so that we have a sense up front if they're likely to be responsible for public art or not. So we can just add that to our applications for major projects.
I'd like to ask Mr. McCleary about the amount of 2%. I guess, first of all, I'm just curious how many projects have been subject to this public art requirement? And two, have you gotten any kind of feedback about this 2% requirement?
I can only speak to the 4 years I've been here, and gosh, I hazard to even try to take a guess at it. Maybe Sherry could help me out there. I would say 8 to 10 or something about that. We haven't gotten much direct feedback on that. That's not to say we can't read what what's going on in people's minds. I mean, even in the case that we talked about with the wild tennis, it seemed that the applicant was ready to move forward with that. So it wasn't that they were necessarily grousing per se about the fee or the requirement. They just happened to come across that exception, and I could see that. Gee, everybody, pass go, you got to pay $20. Oh, well, I have fallen under exception for that. I don't need to pay. So I think it was more a result of that as opposed to that they were really angling to try and hard to find a way to get out from the public art. In fact, she even mentioned that they would probably still be doing something. But So
Well-
I don't have much that I can give you.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
no, that's
Commissioner,
fine.
in terms of
I'm very supportive of public art. I'm just coming from a place that had a 1%
Uh-huh.
and not a 2% for the first million and just a 1% after. And I was around when that was first imposed.
Uh-huh.
And there was resistance to it in the development community.
Was that up in San Luis Obispo?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
There was a number of projects that were well over $1 million, and so it added up to more. And it's easy to talk about, it's only 1% or 2%, but that's someone else's money that we're talking about right now. But if it's your own money, it's pretty serious. So anyway, I was just curious to see what the experience was here.
Yeah, and we really did not have much discussion on that, and Susan, I don't think the committee had too much discussion on the percentage, so.
I think part of, I agree with you, it's somebody else's money that we're asking to devote to artwork in our community. But we don't foresee any huge plans going on, so the idea of 2%, I really can't say, it's been a long time, but there are quite a few communities that have similar percentages like this. But our community is most likely not going to have a bunch of $1 million plus projects. And so 1% is on, it becomes to the point of like, why bother? $3,000 versus $6,000. It's really, we want something meaningful, it seems like. Also, in regards to the amount of public art that we have in Ojai, if you go on the city's website, there's a link to the Arts Commission's website, and there's a recently upgraded PowerPoint that shows all the public art in the city. So with with labels underneath, so you can see it.
Just to be clear, I'm supportive of this schedule,
Yeah.
and especially given the identity, the brand of Ojai is very much an artistic community. So it's not surprising at all that we would have a generous art requirement. So anyway, I was just curious to see what the experience was. But I'm supportive of this amount.
Yeah, nobody's really complained back to us. I mean, Sherry might have a better idea, and she said that not. So I think generally it's just accepted. I mean, probably some people don't want to do it at all, and I get that, especially if they don't know much about art or design or something. I mean, it's an educational process.
Thank you, members of the commission.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I still had one other question, and it was in regards to the schools. Because, I think what I'm reading correctly, that the Art Commission would like to have public art in the public schools and the private schools.
I guess what we're asking for today is, that came up late, like at our last meeting. Actually, Mayor Blatt said, why do you have that as an exclusion? And I've always wondered why we had it as an exclusion. And then because I know of a lot of public art in public schools.
Right.
Or in schools in general. So what we're proposing, and then I think there might have to be some lawyer research to back it up to see what it actually meant, is just, and also we changed it so exclusions unless allowed by state or desired by the developer, but just take the school clause out of there.
Okay.
So the exclusions would be all the other things unless somebody wanted them and the law allowed it. But we would theoretically take out the school thing altogether.
Okay.
So you wouldn't see it on the list.
Okay.
Thereby, it's included, unless we find out otherwise. Isn't that how we left it, or how you suggested we?
Well, staff does not believe that we could impose that requirement on the public schools. We believe that it could be imposed on the private schools. And maybe Mr. Molina, to put you on the spot, but when development occurs on public schools, the approval goes through the state architect, the DSA, and I don't believe we really ever get a chance to even comment or have any regulatory authority over those. But I'm out of my bailiwick here.
Well, we don't in most cases if it's a school function. The schools are preempted from local regulation if they're a public school, if it's doing something related to the school function. But let's say the school district wanted to build housing on their site. That's not directly related to a school function. So in that case, we probably would be able to impose a public art requirement on that development. So it depends on what they're proposing. But and we'll confer more with Joe Fletcher, the city attorney, before this item goes to the city council.
It might be that the school wants to do it, and there might be some state provision for public art funds through the California, what is it called? The California funding for the arts in the state. Anyway.
Well, any project could always, of course, have public art. It would just, be of their own choosing at that point. So they could certainly do that. I think, of course, what we're getting at is whether they're required to or not. So I guess we are looking for some feedback on that particular point from the commission on what you think about that, of taking out that exclusion for the schools, both private and public.
Rob, I think when Ojai Valley School recently did a remodel of their auditorium building, I don't think we had a public art requirement for that.
No, under the current ordinance, they're exempt. Both public and private schools are exempt. So this change would require them, if they met the dollar amount, to have public art as part of any project.
I sense that private schools, for example, like the Weil Academy, sounded like they were really proactive in regard to public art, and sounded like they were wholeheartedly bought into the idea. And I like to think that any private education institutions would feel similar in that regard. So I'm for striking number 7 from this exemption.
I agree, and I think, once you do the research and find out, there may be a possibility for the public schools to have the art, maybe not, but at least the private schools. And, I don't know how many private schools there are within the city limits of Ojai. I think it's Ojai Valley School and maybe Thatcher's not in the city limit, is it? No, it's outside. Yeah, so it's the tennis academy, I think, and maybe a couple, OVS, and there may be a couple of really small. Villanova? No, Villanova's out, aren't they? Yeah.
Villanova is not in the school or in the city limits.
It's just outside. I think there's kind of a jog over there in the city limit there. So, okay. I would say generally I'm in agreement with, the changes that you're proposing, if that helps.
Yeah. Fun reading. Yes.
I just think that this whole document's just been really thoroughly researched, and just reading through it, and all good points made in it. Yeah, any other comments?
I think
from
we
the
pretty
commission?
well exhausted the discussion for this evening. It's getting late, and beneficial would be from here on out.
Well, I just wanted to thank the I'm sorry. Just want to thank the commission again for your input and your comments and for the support of the changes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're going to move on to discussion item number 8, proposed changes to the planning application fee schedule for 2013-14 fiscal year. And turn it over to staff.
Okay, thank you. This is not a new topic for the commission because I've talked about these proposed changes in the last couple of meetings that you've had. But I thought it was a good idea just to include with the packets this for this meeting. And it was really intended for the previous meeting, which was 2 weeks ago, that we didn't have a quorum for. But just so the commission could see all the strike-through and underline changes that we're proposing at this point. And these have already been presented to the city council, and they are ready to take action on Tuesday on the budget. And part of their budget will be the annual review of all the departmental fees. So attachment A has it's fairly small font, but at least the changes are in red, so hopefully you can see them. And I'll just, if I can, I'll just go through them, some of the major highlights. And starting on page 1 of attachment A under appeals, this was a pretty sizable change to the appeal cost, particularly for appeals of staff level determinations to the Planning Commission. It's no longer a deposit-based actual cost. It's a $500 flat fee, and the concept also includes that if a appellant successfully has the Planning Commission grant their appeal, then they actually get their $500 application fee returned, which is a nice accommodation. And then the appeal to the City Council of a Planning Commission decision is still deposit-based, but it's reduced slightly. It's a little bit lower cost, but still the initial cost is lower. Lower on that page, we have a decent reduction in the initial cost for CUPs, both the major CUPs and then the use only. And at the top of page 2, we have a fairly substantial charge or change in that a minor CUP is no longer a deposit-based case. It's a set fee of $500 instead of a initial fee, cost of $790. And there's a desire in the development community to have more certainty in terms of the total cost. So to the extent that we could reliably take away the actual cost deposit-based cases and convert them into set fees, we've done that. And that's one example where we've done that for a fairly common application. And we'll monitor that. If it seems like that's not enough or if it's too much, then we'll adjust it again next year. And then the modification has come down slightly on the CUP. On the same page, design review permit, I've recommended introducing 2 new sub-fees in this category. And well, it's really one new sub-fee. It's for a minor project. And there would be a set cost of $450. So these would be things that would be a little bit beyond the scope of a director's exemption, but so they would still be coming to the Planning Commission, but they were pretty small projects, things that we felt were really straightforward. And it's purposely not pinned down in the definition because I want to have some discretion in terms of what projects would qualify as a minor project. And if we need to clarify that in the future, we will. And then you see there's a second row added there. That's to get at the instance where somebody comes in with a set fee for a minor project and they're not being responsive, they're not addressing the Planning Commission's concerns, and they keep coming back with the same plan. Well, after a certain number of times, after 2 reviews at the Planning Commission, then they have to pay an additional fee. So it's a way to better ensure that they're being responsive, which is one ramification of not having an actual cost-based system. So I thought that was appropriate to add that in, although I hope we don't have to get a resubmittal fee. I think two rounds of review should be adequate. We've deleted on page 5 the public hearing notification because that's something that we would just apply to the project anyway. And administratively, it's a little bit of a headache to have a separate fee for that. In the signs, there are some very major changes, many of which we've talked about before, with the sign plan fees being reduced. There's now a new minor revision category that's a $250 set fee for some of those very small changes to a comprehensive sign program. And then a large change also to the landmark sign fee. That used to be, right now on the books, it's an $800 initial deposit with a $90 set fee. A lot of people really objected to that. It's a pretty steep fee for signage. And so we're actually reducing that to a $180 set fee. Again, still going to the Historic Preservation Commission, but we'll have to just be very efficient and keep the staff report brief and all that. On the next page, on page 7 of 8 at the top, it shows a change to the sign permits, the banner permits and the regular sign permits, and that was initially what we were recommending back in May or March, April, but I've now recommended to leave those alone. And then we got some input tonight about possibly adding another category in here, which we'll present before the City Council, of the banner signs for the arts-related uses that we talked about at length just a little while ago. So just to be clear, we're not recommending raising this normal sign permit fees, and in fact, we may have a reduction for those art-related events. The last one on that page is time extension, which has come down a little bit because it's a pretty straightforward application to put together, or a staff report to put together. The variances on page 8 have gone down quite a bit, from an initial deposit of $2,800 to $1,800. That seems to be more in line with what they're costing with responsive applicants. And then the zone change fees have come down also for the same reason. And again, these are the initial fees, and then we track our staff costs. And if they go less than those initial fees, and then the applicant gets a refund. If they go more than those fees, then we send them a supplemental bill. So every year we try to refine these, and I think the theme this year, even more so than last year, has been trying to provide more certainty to the applicants and trying to reduce some of the common fees and convert them from deposit-based actual cost fees to just set fees or core fees. And one that I skipped over was the director's exemption. We now have that's on page 2 of 8. Instead of a $200 initial deposit plus a $90 set fee, it's now just a flat $120 fee. And I think that that's going to be very well received by the community, because there's a lot of people that say, well, what do you mean it's $200 initial deposit, but you can't tell me, there's no ceiling on it. It could be $2,000. And I say, yeah, it might be $2,000, but it rarely is. We get a lot of very simple applications, and we can, now that I've been here a while, I get a good feel for reviewing them in a half hour or an hour at the most. And then also, because we have this new category of the minor DRP that is lower cost, it's a set fee, but it still comes to the Planning Commission, I think that's going to help really handle some of those medium complexity DRPs. I'm quite confident that the applicants, particularly the ones that have a lot of experience working in Ojai, are going to be very receptive to these fees. Yeah, that is right. So anyway, that's an overview of it, and I've gotten some input from the commission on previous meetings, and I think you've all expressed general support of this, but if you have any additional comments at this time, I'd be happy to present those to the City Council on Tuesday when they take action.
I'd like to express general support. I applaud your goal of providing more certainty up front for, in a lot of these fees. So that sounds like a good direction.
I think I'd like to echo that statement as well. I think it's a step in a good direction and making a lot of people out there a lot happier as well, I think. So any other comments? Anybody? So we'll move on to item number 9, informational items, director report and director actions.
Well, there are several things happening at the city council level that I want to note for the benefit of the commission. Again, they will have their budget adoption on Tuesday, the 25th. But also on that same city council agenda, there's going to be a discussion item on planning priorities, because we are getting, we had the joint meeting with the Planning Commission, City Council, thought we had pretty clear direction on what the short-term priorities were and what the longer term, and then some what we considered more parking lot items started bubbling to the surface. So it's a check-in back with the council, a reminder of our staffing limitations, and trying to just make sure that that they've identified a feasible work scope for us to proceed ahead with, especially for the next 6 months. And one of the things that we'll be doing the next 6 months, and I could have mentioned this in the previous item, is is launching the, assuming the funding gets put in place, and at this point it seems like the City Council is supportive of that, is the neighborhood planning study to start with one neighborhood, retain the services of a consultant, try to put together a process that works at adjusting zoning standards for that area and having them specific to the neighborhood. So we've identified $30,000 in this next fiscal year budget to support that, and I'm hopeful that that will allow us to, with the help of a consultant, actually complete one full round of a neighborhood update, and then we'll take that model and we'll go to other neighborhoods as funding and time and staff workload allows. So that's part of and that was a direct recommendation out of the Planning Commission. So they've taken that seriously and expressed at least no objections to having that $30,000 line item. They will also, at their most recent meeting, they had a first reading and introduction of the establishment of a building appeals board. So the building appeals board would be separate from the Planning Commission, separate from the City Council, but it would review determinations of the building official on building code issues. And it would also be an appellate body for decisions of the building official on building permits. And this is one of the things that came out of the efforts at updating our local amendments to the 2010 building code that we've now decided to hold off or put on the shelf temporarily while we look at the 2013 building code that's soon upon us. That will be out later next month, actually. So that they passed that on first reading. There are some questions and comments from the council. So we have it as a discussion item for second reading on that agenda. We also have a discussion item on revisions to building heights citywide, which was something that a couple of the council members have expressed, have identified as a high priority. And there's a staff report available now on the city's website that talks about the pros and cons of doing that and some of the options for how to proceed with some level of change to the zoning code. And that's a discussion item from the council. They will give staff direction and the commission direction in terms of how they would like the changes to look like, and then that will come back to the Planning Commission and the City Council for hearings if they go there. Separately, we're going to certainly address the 3-story concern in the housing element for the SPL overlay, and that's part of our housing element consultants work scope. But the city council wanted, in addition to that, to look at considering implementing a citywide building height limit, which, again, there's a staff report that that many or all of you may be interested in seeing, and you may, if you happen to be available on Tuesday and you want to sit in on the city council meeting, they may want to also hear from the folks that do review the design review that are going through. So those of you on the commission that have that experience. We have a kickoff meeting with our housing element consultant. He is on board. It was John Douglas was selected as our housing element consultant. He is very capable. His proposal was very well received by the council, as well as a subcommittee or a committee that consisted of the mayor, Chair Nicklin, and myself that reviewed the 3 proposals that we received. And so that contract's been executed, and we actually have a kickoff meeting via teleconference scheduled tomorrow afternoon. And he'll need to get right to work, because we have now a joint meeting scheduled for July 8th, which I think I've told you all about at this point.
This is an incorrect date in the packet.
Oh, what do I say in the packet?
This is June 11. Item 11.
Oh, okay. Well, when we get to item 11, I'll clarify that again. But the joint workshop's now scheduled for July 8th, which is a Monday. Starts at 6. There's no city council after that, so if it needs to go a little bit longer than 2 hours, you have that ability. But it'll be here. We'll have the different setup to accommodate the joint meeting. And then the last item, other than the worksheet of various director decisions that have taken place recently, I'm very pleased to inform the commission that we're moving very rapidly in getting an assistant planner part-time position on board. We had interviews Thursday, and we had one individual that couldn't make it Thursday that we interviewed yesterday. And great candidates. They're to an extent we can't go wrong, but we are going to be. I've identified the top 2, and we'll be discussing some more of the position with those top 2, and we hope to have them on board as soon as later this month or early in July. Probably realistically, it would be sometime early in July. So that's exciting. And then if you turn back to your tab number, is it 10? Oh, gosh. Or tab 9. Director decisions over the last month. We've done quite a few director's exemptions, all for small projects. We've done a temporary use permit for the Ojai Valley Inn and Spa for fireworks that's going to be taking place on June 22nd, about 9:45, just for a short duration. Oh yeah, the old gas station at 1020 West Ojai Avenue. They came in for a restriping of the parking lot and some additional landscaping. It will look a lot better. And he's the owner is either going to be moving his business there, or it looks like he might have a tenant coming in soon. So once they get I think that's going to happen fairly quickly. They'll have it restriped, put the landscaping in. It's already been cleaned up a little bit, and I may have mentioned that last time.
You know what type of?
Yeah, the tenant idea that he had, well, I won't get into the specifics on that, but he's got a tenant that we reviewed to make sure that the use was compatible with that zoning district. So, and we did a couple sign permits and a few tree permits, and that's pretty busy. It's almost got onto the second page, but you didn't meet 2 weeks ago, so. And that's all I have, unless there's questions.
Go on to item number 10, reports on the current code enforcement activity.
Okay, well, primarily for the benefit of Commissioner Osborne, we we are very actively monitoring several code enforcement cases in the city. We're really good about clearing out a lot of the simple ones very quickly, often voluntarily, before we have to do any letters or any talk about any enforcement action. And so the city council, actually the planning commission thought it would be good just to kind of stay informed on some of the types of efforts that we're working on for code enforcement, because that is within our department. And so every packet, we just have a kind of a summary of a status report on where some of the main cases are. And it's good when it's only one page, and that shows a lot of progress, because we handle, what was it, about, what are we up to now? 70 or so. So this list only goes to 61, so we've gotten 10 in the last couple weeks. It's a pretty high volume of complaints, and we're this period we closed a couple sticky ones actually at the top of the second page. But I usually don't get into too much of the specifics unless there's questions of the council. It's really just for your information. Well, there you go. Emily Street, yeah, that actually came, I won't get into the details. So that's all I have on those.
Thank you. Item number 11, future agenda items.
Yes, so Sherry pointed out there is not the joint meeting's not going to be taking place on June 25th. It's going to be July 8th, and so I think you already have that on your calendars. You have July 3rd off, the day before 4th of July, and then I haven't been able to pin down the biodigester presentation, so that may occur on July. That may be deferred. And then we have a couple discretionary projects that would need to come to the Planning Commission that may get ready by your July 17th. And those are the bullet points down below. And we still have tentatively identified the workshop on the water efficient landscape ordinance on July 17th. And I'm sure we're going to get more applications in between now and August 7th, so this will fill in. But this was a really long agenda, and I appreciate the efficiency of the commission getting through the items. So.
Thank you. Item number 12, Planning Commission Subcommittee reports.
I'll make it really quick. We typically meet the first Wednesday of the month, but in July, I'm going to be out of town, and our Public Works Director, who regularly attends our meetings, is going to be out of town. So we've actually moved our meeting up to Wednesday, July 17th, 3 p.m. at City Hall, and we're open to the public. And we're working on prioritizing some public works projects that have been, there's funding available, or funding has been assigned. So it's really exciting. So I invite any members of the public to join us. Thank you.
And that's for complete streets. So there's a subcommittee of the Planning Commission that advises city staff and pursues projects. Is really, really involved in implementing our complete streets policy.
Thank you. And last but not least, our City Council Liaison, Severa Lara.
Thank you, Chair Nicklin. And then I'd like to welcome our new commissioner, Mr. Osborne. And you guys did fantastic today. I cannot tell you, it was a jam-packed agenda. And considering we had to cancel the last meeting, you guys went through it pretty efficient. I was very impressed by how knowledgeable the applicants were when it came to the conditions of approval and if they were okay, if they're not okay. And it seemed like they were comfortable with everything and receptive, and if they had an opinion, they would voice it. So just kudos to that. On the side of the city council, just one thing that I do want to mention is that the light ordinance, we decided to put it on hold because the state is passing their own regulations, and we thought it would be premature for us to pass ours when it's just, I know there was a lot of work put into it, but I think that's just a smart move for we have to delete some things already. We'll just put that on hold. Another thing is I believe this is going to be my last meeting as a liaison. So I just want to express my appreciation. I think that planning has been a big learning curve for me, and participating and hearing how you guys go through the details is really important when we're, as a policy, one of the council members looking at policies, how that affects applicants. And dealing with even fee structures, or if the posts are part of the existing structure, and how we want to treat nonprofits and profits, it is a conversation we need to have. And this is the first step of us here, or as a council member, hearing opinions from not only our commissioners, but from the public. And I think it's important and I think that's why it's important that it's televised, so that we could listen in and make the right decision when implementing the policy or going through an ordinance. So thank you so much. I don't know if you have any questions in regards to myself. I know it's been a long meeting, or curious about a certain issue or concern, or
Is there another liaison appointed?
Yes, I'm not sure who it is. It alternates every 3 months. So, yeah. But thank you guys. Thank you.
Just like to say, Severo, that we really appreciate your encouragement and participation. It's real beneficial to us as well. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
I wanted to say the same thing. Thank you. You've been very engaging when you've been here. It's been really nice. I mean, we get a good flavor of what's going on with City Council, and you've been very encouraging and asked great questions of us. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Guys, have a good evening. A good night.
And with that, I adjourn the meeting.